who's great, Godsad, and he talks about basically suicidal empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there's so much empathy that you actually suicide yourself.
Yeah.
So that we've got civilizational suicidal empathy going on, and it's like I believe in empathy. Like I think you should care about other people, but you need to have empathy for civilization as a whole, and not commit to a civilizational suicide.
Also, don't let someone use your empathy against you so they can completely control your state and then do an insanely bad job of managing it and never get removed.
The fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. The empathy exploit. They're exploiting a bug in Western civilization, which is the empathy response. I think empathy is good, but you need to think it through and not just be programmed like a robot.
Right. Understand when empathy has been actually.
I'm going to go to the beginning because I just want to highlight what I thought was the funniest part about it.
There's a guy who posted on X who's great, Godsad.
With his accent, it kind of sounds like he's referring to Gad Sad as God Sad, which I'm sure Gad wouldn't mind being referred to as. That might be the. I like Elon, and I'm not needling. It's just a humorous joke. Whether or not they described Gad Sad's concept of suicidal empathy properly or as accurately as humanly possible, but we're going to get into it. The idea of suicidal empathy. The funniest thing, by the way, in all of it is when I went into Twitter to find any video describing Gad Sad's suicidal empathy, and I go into the search box and I put in Gad Sad suicidal empathy. And the first thing that comes up is, need help? Contact a hotline. That is what you call the algorithm taking words too literally and not appreciating context. Gad Sad has this concept called suicidal empathy. And it's the idea that you want to care so much that you basically abandon any form of good sense or allow the desire, this primal desire to be so empathetic that you do it to your own demise. And the example that Gad typically refers to, something along the lines of the marriage of the mind virus, a brain parasite, and this idea of being so empathetic that you will let the minor attracted persons, the pedophiles, you'll let them into your house with your children because you don't want to discriminate against them. You'll let the gangbangers on the streets come into the illegal alien MS-13 gang members. You'll let them use your house and you'll give them a room, even if it means they might 50-50 stab you to death or shoot you when you're sleeping and steal your stuff because you don't want to be a racist. You don't want to be a bigot. You got to help humanity. I mean, you got to help those who are downtrodden. The reason why they are MSM gangbangers, MS-13 gangbangers, forces beyond their control for which you need to sacrifice your own safety and your own well-being to rectify. It's sort of as insanely stupid of an idea as saying, when you're on a plane and the masks come down, make sure everybody else on the plane has their mask on first before you put yours on. And then you pass out because you didn't put yours on first. So the idea of suicidal empathy is, better make sure that everybody's got their masks nice and fitting. Remember, take off your face mask because you can't put your oxygen mask on over your face mask if you're still wearing one of those. And you don't do it yourself. And then lo and behold, you die instead of making sure that you've sufficiently protected yourself in order to survive. Why are we talking about it? I would have rather found a better version of the description of suicidal empathy. I'm not sure that what we're seeing coming out of this demon Democrat party is suicidal empathy. I'm actually mildly convinced it's homicidal empathy, or it's just destruction cloaked in empathy. When I say that the Democrats are really seemingly dying on this hill of defending the illegal alien, MS-13, wife-beating, alleged human trafficking, Kilmar Abrego Garcia in particular, but they're going to bat for all of the illegals. They're staking their reputations on defending all of the illegal aliens on the basis of due process, constitutional rights. Because after all, let's just follow this abject insanity where it goes. If an illegal alien can illegally enter a country and quite literally steal the constitutional rights that are saved for natural-born citizens, naturalized citizens, if they could just illegally cross the border and then claim all of those constitutional protections, well, my goodness, do illegal aliens get to buy and acquire firearms because that's a constitutional right? Do illegal aliens have endless free speech rights? I mean, you can't deport them for speech because you'd be violating their First Amendment rights. That's what you call suicidal empathy. Defending an invading force. Well, they're not all bad. They're predatory incursions. I mean, they haven't really declared war on us. They're just seeking a better life, so they're illegally entering here, then claiming constitutional protections, due process, which, incidentally, despite everything they've ever said, Kilmar Abrego Garcia got. I'm not sure his wife got due process when Kilmar was allegedly beating her, but we'll get to there. This is the literal suicidal empathy. And if you need a paradigmic, is that how you pronounce it? Paradigmic example of suicidal empathy, wait until you see Maxine Dexter. This is one of the many. We'll get to the other guy there, Robert Garcia, who are staking their reputations, who are in true suicidal empathetic form, or as I like to say, actual homicidal empathy, because they are defending people who quite literally are killing natural-born Americans, American citizens, their actual constituents, these traitorous pigs. We're going to get to Robert Garcia in a second. Maxine Dexter. I was going to do a video on this yesterday, but it got too dark to actually go do it in the car, and I said, well, I'll save it for today. We're going to break down this abject, homicidal empathy. Now, I'm not going to make fun of the way she looks. I don't know what has happened to her compared to her profile picture, which I wanted to see if it was wildly outdated, because this is her profile picture on Twitter, and it seems to be her official government photo, which, unless I'm mistaken, seems to be 4 years old. So maybe something's going on. I don't know. Making fun of the way someone looks is not the best way to attack their ideas. All that I will say is that her eyebrows were mesmerizing in the way that they move like caterpillars, because I've got caterpillars on the mind. We'll get to that as well. Let's just listen to this once through, and if you'll entertain me, I'm going to then play it again and just break it down. Idiocy by idiocy, suicidal empathetic point by suicidal empathetic point. How long is this one? It's not very long. Listen to this.
Congresswoman Maxine Dexter here, coming to you from El Salvador.
I can't help myself. If you can't understand what this mumbling buffoon is saying, Congresswoman Maxine Dexter from El Salvador. They've all taken a taxpayer trip to El Salvador. I'm sure it's very nice there. Very low crime, by the way. Homicide, 1.9 per 100,000. That is a 20th of what it is in Baltimore. I'm going to shut my big mouth, play it once through, then we're going to go through this. Listen to this.
Congresswoman Maxine Dexter here, coming to you from El Salvador. I flew here last night with 3 of my colleagues to demand that Kilmar Abrego Garcia be released. He is being held in violation of a Supreme Court order expressly telling the Trump administration to effectuate and facilitate his coming home. That is being ignored. This is not just a threat to all people in the United States who could be illegally abducted, detained, and transported internationally against their will, but it is a fact that our president does not recognize the branches of government and the balances of power. This is what we all have been calling a constitutional crisis, yet it is more severe than anything we've seen. We cannot stay silent. We must stay loud. I am here because I refuse to wait for something to happen. We are here to release Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
I refuse to wait for something to happen. There has not been the manifestation of political retardation to a greater degree than this in a very long time. We're going to start this from the beginning, but I love, by the way, right at the end, they just say the quiet part out loud. But we'll get there. There is so much wrong with this, I don't know where to start. They've flown down to El Salvador to demand the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who's being detained by El Salvadorian authorities. They seem to think that not only do the American courts get to bind the president, the American courts are now the executive. Speaking of separation of powers, the courts not only get to bind the president, they get to bind foreign presidents. The Supreme Court of the United States, in as much as it says what this nutcase says they said, which it doesn't, thinks that the Supreme Court can now order a foreign president, Bukele of El Salvador, to release someone who they are detaining for reasons of El Salvadorian law. Who the hell does this idiot think she is?
Congresswoman Maxine Dexter here, coming to you from El Salvador. I flew here last night with 3 of my colleagues to demand that Garcia be released.
We came to a foreign country to demand of a foreign president that they release one of their own citizens that they are currently detaining in whatever very beautiful accommodations Kilmar is getting in El Salvador. They came to demand of a foreign leader that a foreign leader release one of his own citizens that they're detaining under their own domestic law. Holy hell. You want to talk about entitlement? You want to talk about privilege? Maxine? Point 2.
He is being held in violation of a Supreme Court order expressly telling the Trump administration to effectuate and facilitate his coming home.
That's a lie. Effectuate and facilitate, that is called a conjunction. It didn't say that. It did use the word facilitate, which seemingly would require that the Supreme Court dictate to a foreign country, to a foreign president, what they do with one of their lawfully detained own citizens. The Supreme Court didn't say go kidnap Garcia from El Salvador, where he's being detained under El Salvadorian law by El Salvadorian authorities. And if that's what the Supreme Court thinks that it said, congratulations on talking about not respecting the bounds of your own lawful authority.
That is being ignored. This is not just a threat to all people in the United States.
It's not really a threat to all people in the United States. It might be a threat to illegal aliens in the United States, and that might be the point, you vapid idiot of a politician. It might be the point. What else does she say that it's stupid beyond Billy Madison words?
Who could be illegally abducted, detained, and transported internationally against their will.
You think citizens can be detained and transported internationally? I mean, maybe they can go to Guantanamo if they're deemed to be terrorists. Or maybe, if it's Obama, they'll just get killed in a foreign country. Obama didn't worry about, let alone taking back actual American citizens. He just killed them. This is not a threat on everyone in America. It might be a threat on illegal aliens in America, but more specifically, the gangbanger, gang members, wife beaters, alleged human trafficker ones of those. It might be. Suicidal empathy. Won't someone please think of the illegal alien gang member, wife beaters, alleged human traffickers? Oh my goodness. Oh, what's that? They're being lawfully detained in a foreign country of their own citizenship? Let's order them to bring back the illegal alien? This, as far as I'm concerned, should be illegal. I don't know if it is. We'll talk about it Sunday with Robert Barnes on Viva and Barnes, Law for the People, Sunday Night Law Show Extravaganza.
But it is a fact that our president does not recognize the branches of government and the balances of power.
This coming from the woman who's suggesting that the Supreme Court can dictate what a foreign country and a foreign president has to do to their own citizens. These people are idiots.
This is what we all have been calling a constitutional crisis, yet it is...
You've been calling it a constitutional crisis. The true constitutional crisis is that of the courts usurping the power of the executive and the commander-in-chief during what he has declared to be something of a time of war, something of a predatory incursion. That's the constitutional crisis. You can call whatever the hell you want. You call boys girls. I'm sure you'll call this a constitutional crisis. The actual constitutional crisis is your unwillingness to respect the Constitution and the separation of powers between the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, and between domestic and foreign policy, foreign law.
More severe than anything we've seen. We cannot stay silent. We must stay loud. I am here because I refuse to wait for something to happen.
I refuse to wait for something to... I don't even know what that means.
To release Kilmar.
Release Kilmar. Won't someone please think of the gangbangers? I would say stay there, but I don't think El Salvador wants them. A bunch of freaking lunatics. But you want to talk about suicidal empathy? A woman, and yes, I checked, unless I'm mistaken, she was born a woman, is out there defending a wife beater, is out there trying to get the wife beater back to his wife. So that presumably, I know, so long as it's someone else's wife that's getting beaten, I don't think Maxine Dexter cares. It's quite ironic that her last name is Dexter, much like the serial killer. Although that serial killer in the series Dexter, which was one of the greatest series ever made, at least he only killed bad people and the pedophiles. That woman is out there trying to get a wife-beating gang member, illegal alien, back into the country into which he illegally entered so that he can beat his wife some more. But so long as it's someone else's wife, Maxine Dexter is willing to take that risk. But we're not done yet, because we're going to go from one idiot to another. That other idiot, you know who he is. Ironically enough, shares the last name. I wonder if he's... I'm not... Congressman Robert Garcia. We just returned from El Salvador. By the way, we know the taxpayers are paying for this shit. They should all have to reimburse this. Other than the fact that it should be charged under the law. If it's not under the Logan Act, because I'm not a fan of the Logan Act, Barnes and I discuss this all the time, maybe under aiding and abetting and trying to facilitate transportation of a terrorist. I mean, he's designated an MS-13 gang member. Due process. Yeah, he had his due process, you dumbasses. 2, at least in front of judges on bond hearings who declared him to be MS-13 gang members based on the evidence. But I don't like their assessment of the evidence. Well, tough shit. Become a judge then. Don't do that, actually. You're going to be one of those activist judges who are going to tear down the country, much like we see these activist judges doing right now, Boasberg in particular. Let's hear what Congressman Robert Garcia, in his infinite wisdom, has to say after captioning a tweet with the following: "We just returned from El Salvador and demanded that Donald Trump follow the 9-0 Supreme Court decision to return Kilmar home. We must fight for due process and the Constitution. In fact, when Kilmar gets back, we're going to give him a gun. Second Amendment, bitches. You don't want to deny him his rights there." Let's hear what this guy has to say.
Yeah, I think it's really important that people are there and continue the pressure on what is clearly an illegal deportation of Kilmar Garcia and so many others. To be really clear, the United States Supreme Court has voted a 9-0 unanimous decision that Kilmar needs to be facilitated and have a return back to the United States. Lower courts have affirmed this. The Trump administration themselves have admitted that they sent Kilmar Garcia there on accident. So there is no reason why he should not be back home. And the real issue is really beyond an immigration story here or an immigration crisis. This is about the rule of law. It's about due process. It's about everyone in this country.
He was before, I believe, 17 judges over the course of the years. He was in front of 2 bond hearing judges who, after due process, declared him, based on the evidence, to be an MS-13 gang member. He was, based on due process, accused by his own wife of beating her. I don't know, but due process means we get our way, not that he gets deported. Constitutional rights for illegal aliens who have stolen them and are criminals.
Who under the Constitution is afforded due process, whether they're a U.S. citizen, a temporary resident, on a student visa. That is a bedrock.
Whether or not they're a U.S. resident. What did you just hear? I can't believe the level of dishonesty.
Citizen, a temporary resident, afforded due process, whether they're a U.S. citizen, a temporary resident, on a student visa. That
a U.S. citizen, a temporary resident on a visa. Well, none of those 3 apply to Garcia. He was an illegal alien. The only administrative error was that they deported him back to El Salvador, where they deemed it to be a risk, which is why they had that prohibition from removal, because the rival gang members in El Salvador would have viewed him as a problem and maybe exacted some violence on him. That was the basis for withholding his removal to El Salvador, because of it predicated on his gang membership. We all know this. You've been around the channel for a few days now.
That is a bedrock of the United States of America. Now, we had meetings yesterday,
is she wearing
classified briefings with the...
Is she wearing sunglasses because this was after he beat his wife? Are she wearing sunglasses to cover up the scratch on his eyes when he threw his boot at her? I wonder. Maybe someone should ask her. Oh, wait, that's right. Someone did ask her and she didn't answer.
U.S. ambassador, folks on the ground, Kilmar's family, very, very productive, putting a lot of pressure on the Salvadorian government and press to ensure that he is brought back home, but also lifting up the...
Back home? He is home. This is not suicidal empathy. This is civilizational destruction. This is the deliberate attempt to undermine Western society, to destroy America from within, and to basically demand that the president, the commander-in-chief, who has not just the authority to do this, but the obligation to do it because he was elected upon it, to ensure that he can't do it. I don't know. Garcia is an American citizen. You can't deport him. And I don't support shutting him up either. Let him speak, but let us all make a whole hell of a lot of fun at him. Let's be Ralph. Point and mock these idiots. Lunatics is right. Liney Bell. That's all we have on the suicidal empathy portion of this. That's the latest updates of what's going on there. Did I get everything here? Yeah, I think I did. Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. It's afternoon in California as well. The Quartering, thank you for the raid. This is a wonderful, wonderful, flattering thing to be part of the Rumble lineup on a daily basis. Viva Fry, for those of you who don't know who I am, make sure that you are liked, subscribed, shared. The podcast, unless I forget, go on podcast format as well via audio. I put the clips on CommuTube. The weekly live streams at the Rumble lineup are exclusively on Rumble. Now, let me go see what's going on. We got this. Forced name change says, find the ex another city to live in, a new job, a house, new school, where her former boyfriend's associations can't find her, and see if her story changes again. Yeah, because when she was on with, what's that guy's name on Good Morning America? Doesn't really matter. Ooh, the woman looks terrified, but I might just be totally projecting that which I want to see on her. She doesn't look very happy. My husband's alive. Ray Kujua in our vivabarneslaw.locals.com community says, for the Dems, they want to make up what due process is. Due process is a magical phrase for them now. It never had any place in the Trump warfare. No. The due process of the Jan 6ers, nothing. Lock them up. Deny them bail. Give them excessive terrorist enhancements. They gave Enrique Tarrio terrorist enhancements, or at least they wanted to. I think they did, actually, because that's how they got to a wildly insane sentence. Terrorist enhancements for the Proud Boys who did jack squat. They did not only nothing that could be considered terrorism, I think they actually did things which could be considered civicism. Yeah, they were protesting the trans stuff. They were protesting BLM. They gave terrorist enhancements to the Jan 6ers, to the Oath Keepers, and to the Proud Boys, unless I made a mistake, in which case I'll correct, but I don't think I have. But no, MS-13, wife-beating, human trafficker, illegal alien, due process. All right, people. We're going to have a guest on at 4:30 to talk about the Canadian stuff, because we need to talk about the Canadian stuff. It's the final stretch of the insanity in Canada. But before we get there, I want to highlight something here. Let me see something here. Oh, yeah. On the news, just to finish up the news of the immigration in the courts and whatever, and the news of the days, there's a split decision where, what's his face? Gorsuch Roberts side with left-leaning Supreme Court justices in immigration ruling. It sounds very bad. Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote the majority opinion in the 5-4 case, a possible sign of the court's thinking as it gears up to hear high-profile immigration cases next month. Sounds scary. Sounds consequential. I don't think this decision is scary or consequential, nor is it an indication of what's going on here. This, unless I'm misunderstanding the scope and extent of this, it's almost a procedural decision. Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch and Chief Justice John Roberts sided with the left-leaning justices in an immigration appeals case, a narrow ruling that could portend the court's future thinking amid a flurry of legal cases centered on immigration. For those of you who don't know what portend means, I believe it means like bookending, could be a sign or warning that something, especially something momentous or calamitous, is about to happen. Portend. The 5-4 ruling in Monsalvo Velasquez versus Bondi centered on the government's interpretation of a 60-day, quote, voluntary departure, end quote, deadline, which authorities can use to allow certain immigrants deemed to be of, quote, good moral character, end quote, to depart the U.S. on their own terms within that time frame. Supreme Court ruled, with the backing of Roberts and Gorsuch, that any voluntary departure deadlines for immigrants under the 60-day departure time that fall on a weekend or on a legal holiday in the U.S. should be extended to the next business day. That doesn't seem like a consequential enough decision, in my view, to even warrant the 4 dissenting. In fact, in law, let me finish this up and I'll get to it. Writing for the majority, Gorsuch noted that this interpretation of the 60-day period aligns with long-standing administrative practices, including in immigration law. When Congress adopts a new law against the backdrop of long-standing administrative construction, the court generally presumes the new provisions work in harmony with what that came before. Since at least the 1950s, immigration regulations have provided that when calculating deadlines, the term day carries its specialized meaning by excluding Sundays and legal holidays if a deadline would otherwise fall on one of those days. Okay. I'm actually curious what the dissent is in this. While the case is questioned that centers largely on technicalities of certain immigration proceedings, a slim majority ruling could offer, it offers nothing. Thomas, Alito, Kavanaugh, Coney Barrett dissented, noting that in their view, the court lacked jurisdiction to weigh in on the matter. So just another purely procedural issue as to why they can't even interpret the regulation. While Thomas said he would have remanded the case back to the lower court to consider other outstanding issues, Barrett took issue with the nature of the appeal filed by Montalvo. Alito. I'm actually just encouraged that Amy Coney is defying the liberals this time. We'll see where that goes. In his view, the 60-day period imposed by the government is straightforward, should include weekends. There will always be sympathetic pro se alien who is a day late or two, said Alito. Unless the court is willing to extend the statutory deadline indefinitely, it would be presumably forced to say in such cases that a day late is just too bad. For this reason, sympathy for petitioner cannot justify the court's decision. It's very funny. In Canada, for those who are interested, we had a Supreme Court justice. Her name was Bich. They used to call her the Bish on the bench. What was her name? Her first name, Bish, Supreme Court, Canada. Come on, what's her name? Bish, Supreme Court Justice. What's her first name? AI, the name Bish is most probably associated with. What the flip is going on that I can't find this Supreme? Am I pronouncing?
B-I-S-H.
I'm pronouncing B-I-C-H. I'm spelling it B-I-C-H. The current Chief Justice, Richard Wagner, in the Supreme Court. Okay. What the Supreme Court Justice meet our justices? I don't think she's on the bench anymore. I met her at a cocktail.
B-I-S-H, not C-H.
Yeah, I'm doing B-I-S-H. What's her name? Well, what's her first name? Just tell me her first name. It's going to drive me crazy. No, it doesn't matter. We'll get it in a second. Judge Bish, out of Canada, once said that sympathy cannot guide the court, and we all agree on that. For anybody who has never practiced law, by the way, I used to practice law. I practiced for 13 years. I was always standing. 2007, I was sworn in, and I voluntarily relinquished my license, give or take, in 2013. And I did that only because I was no longer in Quebec, no longer practicing in Quebec, and all the people were doing were filing anonymous bar complaints because they didn't like my tweets against Justin Trudeau. Plus, I don't need that license. Not gonna practice. Even if I go back to Quebec, I'm not practicing law anymore. At least not in the court setting. Sympathy can't guide the court. Everybody knows that. When it comes to calculating delays, you go by clear juridical days. And if a delay to do something ends on a day where the court is closed, they extend it to the next court day. That decision is irrelevant. Nothing big, nothing nada, whatever. Where it's going to be really big is when the Supreme Court came down with that one paragraph ruling staying deportations of Venezuelans that are currently being held in Texas. The question then is going to be, are they going to stay Trump's ability to deport under the Alien Enemies Act indefinitely? Or are they going to say that we need a formal declaration of war? Or are we going to say that it's not a predatory incursion unless there is something of a formal declaration of war, and that Trump now has to go through individual hearings to deport any one of the upwards of 20 million illegal aliens in America, thus effectively making it impossible to undo the problem that has been 4+, maybe more than that, years in the making under Obama, under Biden. Although the irony is that under Obama and under Clinton, they deported a whole hell of a lot more illegals than Trump has deported, and they face no impediment whatsoever. In fact, nobody really speaks of the amount of illegal immigrants deported by Obama and Clinton. I think it's in the millions. I'm just wondering if it's in the 10 million. So that's that. Let me just see one thing here. I'm going to go make sure my guest is coming. I will say,
would you be talking about Madam Justice Marie-France Biche?
Marie-France Biche, yes, that's who I'm talking about. Her name was Biche, and they used to call her the bitch on the bench. I didn't make that up. And yeah, that's it. What else is going on? Let me bring this up actually before we forget. King of Biltong in the house, and there's another super chat. Let me bring this one up here. Biltong, I got the latest shipment and it's freaking delicious. The piri piri is my favorite. King of Biltong, try our Biltong, almost 50% protein, packed with B12, creatine, iron, zinc, and much more. A perfect snack addition to your weekly meal prep. Go to biltongusa.com. Code Viva for 10% off. And I was just talking to one of my kids about Anton because we were talking about, or she was learning in school about the slaughter of white farmers in South Africa. And I'm like, that's good that they're actually finally teaching that in school, because for a long time it was basically verboten in Canada. You couldn't talk about the slaughter of white farmers in South Africa. You couldn't talk about the deliberate racial targeting of whites in South Africa. They were getting no preferential treatment when you talk about actual, legitimate, bona fide asylum seekers. And I told my kid that Anton of Biltong, who sends us all of the Biltong, it's South African jerky, was from South Africa and can attest to the abject, racially motivated, won't use the word genocide flippantly, but slaughter that's been going on in South Africa for decades now. Speaking of Canada, this is forced name change. Did you all see that the civil unrest in China I mentioned a month ago has finally started to make the news? No, but I do know, forced name change, that you did absolutely mention it a little while ago. Our guest coming in, we're going to jump to the Canadian side because it's the last week of the election and basically the future of Canada, depending on how this goes. The middle finger meme is taking off, as it should. And we should milk that. I still will not endorse the Conservatives, period, full stop. I'm not even going to apologize for it. I will never tell anybody who to vote for. Even when I ran for the PPC, I did not tell people to vote for me. But I will tell people that if you vote for the Liberals, you are unhinged, stupid, politically ignorant, politically amnesic, or dependent on the government, and in which case, I pity you, but at some point, it's not just that you live with the consequences of your vote, it's that everybody else does as well. That middle finger...
I'd like to add evil in there as well.
Yes, we'll definitely admit of the possibility of evil. For some, I mean, some are cowardice and evil. You know, the difference is taking pleasure in what you're doing for the self-preservation. Meghan Murphy, for those of you who don't know, is currently running for the People's Party of Canada. Meghan Murphy, for those of you who don't know, and I was on her show yesterday. She's going to publish that interview later. She's had her bank account frozen. I want to say anew because I don't know if her bank accounts were ever frozen before. She's had her Canadian bank account frozen as she was running for the People's Party of Canada. Now, that's to say that the government has yet again gone back to freezing bank accounts for reasons unknown. But we're going to present to the world a PPC candidate, and not because I have any favoritism for the PPC, although they do align with my values more than any other party in Canada. I've extended the invite to any Conservative who wants to come on. Roman Baber was on once upon a time. Maybe he'll come back on. But Meghan, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing? I'm excited to be here.
This is going to be, well, it's going to blow the minds of people out there because I heard about the story. I wanted to make sure the details were accurate. About 2 weeks ago, people were like, Viva, have Meghan on. Her bank account was frozen. They're doing it again. Tell the world who you are. For those of you who might not know, you got your own channel. You got your own podcast.
I'm Meghan Murphy. I am a Canadian in self-exile in Mexico. And my podcast is The Same Drugs. I've been I guess a controversial figure in Canada for as long as I've been figuring in Canada. But yeah, I decided to run for the People's Party of Canada this election on very short notice. So I had very little time to campaign. I mean, they obviously called it snap election, so none of us had very much time. But I mean, I'm not sure how much of my story you want me to get into right now.
Everybody, let's start from the beginning real quick. Like, where were you born?
Vancouver, BC. So I was born and raised in Vancouver, actual Vancouver, not the suburbs. Vancouver thing. And I actually did a BA in women's studies and a master's degree in women's studies, which, I mean, I feel like I'm the only person on the planet who's ever done anything useful with those degrees, which is, you know, to criticize gender theory and all the nonsense that you learn in these programs. And I was one of the only, I don't know, maybe even the only feminist in Canada to speak out against gender identity ideology when it first came along. So back in 2016, the Liberal Party presented Bill C-16, which is Canada's gender identity legislation. And I just like killed myself trying to get the word out about what I saw as dangerous legislation. You know, this is going to nullify women's sex-based rights. Nobody would publish me on this. Luckily, you know, I had my own channels and website and social media to talk about it. But, you know, I was basically blacklisted in Canada for speaking about this.
Let me pause you there just for the Americans who might not appreciate. C-16 is the bill that I want to say Jordan Peterson was already on the map, but this is the bill that added gender expression to aggravating factors for so-called hate crimes under the criminal code. It basically resulted in what Jordan Peterson back in 2016 was calling compelled speech, where if you didn't gender someone properly, you could face criminal charges. That's the C-16?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So Jordan Peterson and I were probably like the most well-known people who spoke out. So I testified at the Senate against the bill in 2017. Jordan Peterson did also. Gad Saad did also. And, you know, obviously everything we said was ignored, but I thought that it was important to get on record. And I've been advocating against gender identity ideology and in favor of women's, you know, sex-based rights, and against men in sports and men in women's prisons and men in women's shelters and transition houses ever since, you know, in Canada, but also all around the world. Canada has just been, you know, a nightmare on this. Every time I try to speak in public, first we lose the venue, then we're protested, I'm threatened, I get death threats. It's just been terrifying. Like, part of the reason I left Vancouver was because it was, you know, it was during the draconian COVID mandates and things appeared to be getting worse. And I was like, I'm getting the hell out of Dodge before things do get worse, before I'm unable to like literally speak or work, or somebody tries to drag me through a human rights tribunal or something like that. Because not only at that point was I criticizing gender identity ideology, which was unacceptable in Canada, and particularly in Vancouver, which is a very woke, very leftist place. But I was speaking out against the mandates as well. But, you know, it became scary for me to walk around in my neighborhood. I was living in East Van, and, you know, there's a ton of trans activists there. I'd been screamed at, I'd been stalked, I'd been threatened. I just didn't feel safe, you know, just walking my dog around. And I was like, I'm getting out. This is crazy.
Wikipedia says you're 47 years old.
I'm not. I don't know why. I'm actually 45, so it's not that far off. But I don't know why the internet is decided I'm 47, and I keep trying to figure out why. I'm like, why would they lie like that? Like, okay, it's not that, but it's, you know.
First of all, I couldn't even believe that you're in your 40s. That's why I brought up. I thought it was a different Wikipedia profile.
I know. No one believes me. I'm very youthful.
When's your birthday?
79.
Yeah, well, what year? What month? I mean,
October 79.
I'm 6 months older than you. 5 months older than you. Okay, so
you're Mexico sun.
and you're the Florida sun. Actually, look what it brings out nice highlights in the hair.
Yeah.
So you're East Van is East Vancouver. You're born and raised in Vancouver. Just unless you don't want to answer, how many siblings do you have, and what did your parents do?
I have a sister. She's actually a twin, which people find hilarious, but she's fraternal, so people don't attack her on the street. Also, she doesn't look anything like me. My parents, my sister and her family and my parents all have moved over to the island. So now when I've gone back to BC, I usually just go straight to the island and avoid Vancouver entirely. I'll go there for a night, maybe.
You go to Vancouver Island.
That's right. Yes.
Well, that's the woke epicenter of British Columbia.
Yeah, but you can kind of hide out in the forest.
Okay. When I was there with my wife 20 years ago,
Victoria is bad, but I don't go to Victoria. They're like in the woods.
Is it the furthest point is Port Albert or Port Albany? If you drive all the way down. Anyway, we went down there. It was a little bit a rough town. It's at the end of the road on the Never Eat Shred on the west side.
Yeah, I've never been that far down. But yeah, so I totally forgot what you just asked me. What did you ask me?
Siblings and that, but Bill C-16. So I don't want to pull up something just on the spot, but I actually bookmarked it before going live. Do you know who Faye Johnstone is in Canada?
Yeah, he came when I testified at the Senate to protest me.
Okay, because this it's really funny. I bookmarked this before the show. It says it's insanity. I didn't know who this person was. Then I go to the profile and see that not only is it a man who identifies as a woman, but as
a very
women.
unattractive man who identifies as a woman.
He says the Conservative Party platform includes 4 mentions of women. 3 of those are related to anti-trans policy. That says everything that needs to be said about the Conservative Party and gender equity. Then I go to the profile, gay trouble personified. She, they, which is where I got really confused. And then I go look at this, and then sure enough, it's a guy wearing a shirt that says protect trans kids. And this is what's going on in Canada, where the Conservatives, who I think are milquetoast fence-sitting cowards when it comes to this stuff, are taking heat for being too far right on this, what I believe to be fundamentally homophobic and fundamentally misogynist trans ideology in Canada. So you know that person.
Yeah, I'd have no idea what he's talking about. I can't even imagine what would be on the CBC platform that would be anti-trans, because they barely said anything about it at all. But yeah, he's been around from the get-go. Like I said, he literally showed up in Ottawa when I was there at the Senate in 2017 to testify against this bill, to protest me. And he gets a ton of funding from the government. So he has all these ridiculous projects, that queer momentum, yada, yada, yada. He makes money through these endless tens of thousands of dollars of government grants to promote his little ideology and wear ugly lipstick on the internet.
Protect trans kids. He's interested in the kids. That says all you need to know. Okay, so
I want to tell you, actually, because you asked that question about my parents, and I just want to briefly say, because I think I have a humorous background maybe, but so I grew up, my dad was Marxist when I grew up. So he was like a union guy. Like we were NDP people for our whole lives. So I was like a communist. And eventually, like, I sort of settled into socialism, which I thought was much less extreme. But so I was like a Marxist and a feminist for most of my life, and like a very dedicated NDP voter until I really started getting involved in all this gender identity stuff and started becoming a free speech advocate and realizing how bad these parties were sort of I probably around 2013, 2014, 2015 was when I was really done with all that.
What did you do for a living before say 2016?
Oh, all sorts of things. I mean, I was a student for a long time, right? I did a master's, and I also actually did almost an entire master's degree in journalism. I dropped out of journalism because I dropped out of the program, actually, just because I had started working in journalism. So I was like, I don't really want to spend more money and time in school. The whole point of this is that I was working. So, prior to that, I was in school forever. So doing, all the jobs, like working in cafes.
Professional academic.
Yeah, sort of. And then, but I was poorer than everybody else. So I was always working like 3 jobs and then trying to finish school at the same time. This is why it took me so long to finish my degrees. But yeah, at a certain point, I got into journalism and I really just started working for myself mostly. Like I had been doing community radio, which turned into podcasting, and then I was blogging, and then I was able to start freelancing. And so I just managed to sort of piece things together that way. So that's what I've been doing for the past 10 at least years.
Very cool. Now, I want to bring this up just to clarify, or at least explain if someone doesn't understand, why I call the trans movement homophobic. Because they take gay kids and tell them, you're not gay, you're actually a boy in a girl's body, or a girl in a boy's body. Let's cut that dick off, or let's cut your boobs off, and sterilize gay kids. That's basically what the trans movement is doing. It's telling people, you're not just gay, you are in the wrong body, and we've got to go ahead and sterilize you. And particularly vulnerable children who are, I would not say disproportionately, but maybe statistical overrepresentation of on the spectrum, and therefore are easier to manipulate and easier to induce into panic. When did you leave Canada?
January 2021.
This is COVID related.
Yeah. So this was during COVID. This was just before the vaccine mandates came down, but they were coming down the pike, and they were talking about shutting down the border. And so I was just like, okay, I'm getting out of here. I didn't necessarily plan on staying forever. Like I just abandoned my whole life in Vancouver. I left my apartment, I left my truck, I left all my stuff there. I brought my dog with me, and then thought, I'll come here and I'll see how things go in Canada. not realizing how much worse they would get, and they did continue to get worse. Of course, we saw the vax mandates, and it seemed like there was no end in sight, so I just didn't go back. And and to be honest, like, I was so much happier here. I feel people always think it's strange that I feel safer and happier and more comfortable in Mexico, but I suppose it depends on your disposition. But I love, I have community here. I live in a small town, a small psychotic town, but
it's funny, like, people say Florida has a high crime rate, and it does in certain areas, and it doesn't in other areas. But when you've lived under curfew, and when you've lived under a vax passport for kids 13 years and older, and when you've lived through neighbors calling the cops because you're playing in a park, dude, you understand what safety means, and what the feeling of living in a prison means. So you end up in Mexico, COVID related, and it turns out to be indefinite. We got to get to the deciding to run for the PPC and the freezing of the bank account. So I mean, how did you decide that, and what the hell is going on with your bank account?
I really genuinely like the PPC platform, and I stopped voting in 2015 because I felt like none of these parties, the NDP, Conservatives, Liberals, represented my interests. I was done voting for the NDP. I was not going to vote for the Liberal Party, and I wasn't interested in the Conservative Party either, so I just didn't vote. And I didn't vote again until the PPC came along, and I was like, thank God there's a party with a platform that I genuinely like. I don't even feel like I'm compromising. I genuinely like the platform. And last year, and they were talking about gender identity ideology from the get-go. They were talking about free speech. They were talking about freedom. They were talking about charter rights. And, when COVID came along, Maxime spoke out so boldly and unapologetically against the mandates. He supported the convoy. This is what I want in a political leader and in a party. I don't care if they're not going to win. I did an event with Maxime last year in Nanaimo, so I met him, and I just really liked him a lot. I think he's a really nice, good, smart guy, and I had him on my podcast a couple months ago. And just before I did the interview, I looked up mild riding in East Van in Vancouver, and I was like, oh, there's no candidate running. So while I was talking to him on the podcast, I was like, I looked at my writing and I noticed there was no candidate. Do you think I should run? And he was like, yes. And he was very enthusiastic. And he called me the next day and he was like, I'm serious. I think you should run. And I was like, I think maybe I'm serious. So I thought about it for a minute and I thought, like, why not? I'm not going to win this riding. This is an NDP stronghold. But I just think it's important for people to have the option to vote for somebody that they actually want to vote for. And I'm positive there have to be some people living in East Van who don't think that men are women, and who care about their charter rights, and who care about free speech, and feel totally abandoned and unrepresented politically.
I can't say I do feel the same way. It blows my mind. I don't consider myself to be a conservative by any stretch. I'll say a constitutionalist or a libertarian. But the fact that the conservatives, or the so-called conservatives, are, I seriously think they're on par with, or maybe even say left of the Democrats in some states in America. Which was the bill, the conversion therapy ban, which the conservatives voted unanimously for. What year was that law in, or that bill?
Oh my gosh. I remember doing some events around this, but 2019, 2020? Am I totally off there?
No, I think what year was the conversion therapy ban in Canada? It has to be pre-COVID. But
was it pre-COVID?
Let's see, the conversion.
It might have been passed during COVID.
2021.
I remember doing an online. Okay, yeah, I did an online panel about it. So.
That actually makes a little more sense in terms of how it slipped through unanimous vote by the so-called conservatives, which is what Jordan Peterson talks about: criminalizing psychiatry, criminalizing therapy, criminalizing parenting. And everybody who's watching probably knows this, but the C16 fear. And I remember, being neutral at the time and just explaining the law and how, sometimes bad cases make for bad law. It has come to fruition. There was, out of British Columbia, the It was a cafe, an Italian name. I'll see if I can remember, Bonesta or something, where they were, the cafe was fined, the restaurant was fined $30,000 for misgendering an employee. You have the father who was found in contempt for interfering with his child's transition, which led to criminal contempt. He was locked up for, misgendering, among other things. It was a little more complex than that. So it's come to fruition. And then in 2021, the so-called conservatives vote unanimously in favor of the conversion therapy ban. And there's nobody in Canada speaking out about it except for the PPC. You're taking flack for running. I mean, from fellow Canadians, are they accusing you of being the vote splitter?
Yeah, always. I mean, anytime I post anything about the fact that I'm running, anytime I post anything about the PPC, anytime I post anything about Maxime, at least somebody will pop up and say, a vote for the BBC is a vote for Mark Carney, or, why? No, we all have to band together and support the Conservatives. And it's like, first of all, no, we don't have to do that in a democracy. Supposedly, we live in a democracy. People should be able to vote with their hearts, as it were, their consciences, vote with their values. But, I just don't, I'm not, you guys are banking on the Conservatives to save Canada, and I don't buy it. And I'm not saying don't support the Conservatives. A lot of this is, if you're going to do strategic voting, this is riding dependent too. The Conservatives aren't going to win in my riding. The Liberals aren't going to win in my riding. The NDP is going to win in my riding. So you can vote actually for whoever you want, and it probably won't make any difference.
Well, and I ran in Westmount NDG, which went Liberal for 30 years. I ran against Mark Garneau. He got 53% of the vote. They get over 50% of the vote in these Liberal ridings. I might have been better off doing it in another riding, but then I'd have to move. Okay. So then the question is this, and speaking of, banking on whatever, when did your bank account got frozen?
Yeah. So the day that my candidacy was confirmed, which was about 2 weeks ago, on a Tuesday, and that very same day, I discovered that my bank account was frozen, and nobody told me. Like, I didn't get an email, I didn't get a phone call, I didn't get any notification. I just sort of found out by accident because something wasn't going through, and I called the bank to check, and they were like, "Oh, your bank account is frozen." And I was like, "Why is my bank account frozen?" "We can't tell you." It's like, what? And
may I ask which bank?
Van City Credit Union. So it's actually a credit union, not a bank. I've had my account with Van City Credit Union since I was 10. It's been my only bank account in Canada for my whole life.
So I was hoping it was going to be TD or BMO or a big one where we could hate the big man. So it's a credit union gets the call or the letter and says, "We're freezing your bank." Did you say it was the day? Like, was it after you filed your papers? Was it after you announced?
I'd filed my papers. The deadline was the Monday. So we were like right up against the line because, as you know, you have to collect all those 100 signatures. And it was a real struggle for us because we had such a short timeline, and I wasn't even there. And it's a brutal riding, like I said, it's such a leftist riding. It was hard to get people to sign, but we did. So we were right up against the line. So we managed to get everything in by the Monday. So the Tuesday I got, it was officially confirmed. I'd done it. I'd submitted all the things that I needed to do, and I was a candidate. And so, I had filed some of the papers the prior week. So it was sort of on the record, as it were. But yeah, it was the very same day that this happened. And I called, so I talked to this useless person who wouldn't tell me anything. And then I called back again, and I was told that, they'd frozen the bank account because they get these directives from the government, and then they just have to do it, and they can't tell me anymore. I was like, what is the directive? Like, what's happening here?
You have not seen a copy of the letter, the directive?
No, they won't send it to me. They said, okay, we got a fax.
Did they mention if it was federal or provincial?
It's that they finally told me there's a fax and there's a number attached from it with this guy from the CRA. And I was like, can you show me the fax? No, here's the phone number of this guy. So I called the phone number. The guy has a voicemail that says he's on vacation. He's been on vacation. He's on vacation all week. which is weird and convenient to me. There's another extension on the voicemail. He's away. I call this extension. I call the other extension. I leave a voicemail. Nobody returns my call. I call back later in the day, leave another voicemail. Nobody returns my call. I call back the next day, leave another voicemail. Nobody returns my call. I'm still calling, trying to call this guy. I call back again the next day. And finally, I call another general number who refuses to refer me to anybody I can talk to. I was like, my bank account is frozen. Apparently, the government has directed my bank to do this. I'm trying to find out why. She was like, well, I can't give you any information unless you give me more information about what's going on. I was like, I have no information. I've been calling all week. I have no idea what's going on. Calling you to get information. It was an insane, the whole experience was insane. It was like, what? Nobody can tell me anything. Vancity refused to send me anything in writing, period. I was like, can you send me an email? Nope.
And they said it was from the CRA, which is the Canada Revenue Agency.
Yeah.
In theory.
Yeah. I mean, and no, I don't have a tax problem.
No, and also typically they garnish.
I don't even really make an income in Canada. I haven't for years. So, I don't owe them any, it's not like I'm owing them tens of thousands of dollars in taxes or anything like that.
No, but even still they would garnish or
they wouldn't freeze your bank account for that either way. But
so Vancity's frozen it. They haven't told you yet why. You haven't been able to resolve it. And meanwhile, you're also still trying to run, presumably now without being able to dispense a fine. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to remember the process because I had to create a separate. I think I had to.
Somebody else has done this for me. Created the separate bank account so I can access the donation funds for my campaign.
Yep.
By the way, if anybody wants to donate to my campaign, please go to the People's Party of Canada website and find my name and click the donate button. We're still taking donations. Yeah, I mean, I was supposed to fly to Canada last Sunday. I had a flight booked, and then this happened on the Tuesday before, and I spent the week trying to figure out what was going on. And by the time it got to Sunday, I still had no idea what was going on, and I just honestly felt freaked out. And I was like, okay, I don't know what they're up to, and I'm not going to Canada to end up in jail or something. I just don't trust this situation. This all seems super sketchy. Also, I don't have access to a Canadian bank account, which is attached to my Canadian credit card, and I don't want to travel under those circumstances. It's just so I couldn't even go to Vancouver to campaign.
I'm gonna give everybody the link so they can.
Oh, thank you.
Donate if they are so inclined. But although I think you have to live in, fairly certain you have to live in Canada or be a Canadian resident in order to donate. So
yeah.
One of the lessons I remember from my stint of running for office.
What year was that you ran?
2021, the second cycle where they performed much better than the first one. But people don't understand what goes into starting a new federal political party and how long it takes to break through and how the media can suppress and suffocate the existence of any party, especially a new one that they don't like, that they consider to be, whether they've deemed to be xenophobic.
Far-right extremists.
Yeah. So that's amazing. So still frozen. You found a way to not circumvent, but still nonetheless campaign. But you don't really plan on going back to Canada anytime soon.
No, I just, I don't feel comfortable and I don't want to. And I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means I'll never go back. I luckily have U.S. citizenship. My mother's American, so I've never lived in the U.S. I have U.S. citizenship. So a few years ago, I started moving my finances over to an American bank account, specifically because of what was going on in Canada. And I was like, I don't want to be beholden to the Canadian government. I actually don't want to pay taxes to the Canadian government. You mentioned this yesterday, but I was like, I'm not paying taxes to this government who's suppressing me and trying to destroy my work and I'd been taken out of the algorithm and censored, and the government funded Canadian media had blacklisted me. My own mayor in my own city had called me despicable in public. The Toronto mayor did the same. These parties were like, no, I'm not giving you any of my money. Screw you. And I just didn't trust them, and then they'd started freezing the bank accounts of the truckers. And I was like, I'm going to deal with Canada as little as I possibly can in terms of banking, taxes, income. So I had been moving stuff over to the U.S. bank account already. Thank God, because I was right to be freaked out about exactly this. So it's not like I don't have access to money anymore. It's still an impediment for sure, because there was still some things that I was dealing with over there. I still have an apartment in Vancouver, so I'm paying my rent through that bank account, paying bills through that bank account. I have a truck in Vancouver. I'm paying my insurance through that bank account. Like those kinds. It's still like, and also beyond that, it's insane. Like, how dare you do this to a Canadian? I mean, they don't know that I have a U.S. bank account. For all they know, they froze my bank account, went on vacation, refused to contact me or answer or return any of my phone calls, and I was starving and homeless.
Yeah, you could have been incapable of coming back, and the bottom line, it's tyrannical to do it. When we got to Florida, and I realized quickly that if you don't pay your water bill, they cut your freaking water off, like no questions. And like, that's inhumane. Cutting off your finances is like cutting off an essential resource. And they do it flippantly with no rhyme or reason and no oversight, and you're still screwed. And if you didn't have alternative means, have you been in touch with anyone from the Conservative Party? Melissa Lantsman, Pierre Poilievre? I mean, any of the candidates?
No.
And they've been totally silent on what's been going on because they'll say, well, it's a CRA issue. We can't get involved. We don't know what's going on. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably like an undesirable even for the Conservatives, despite the fact that I was super supportive of Poilievre for a long time. Like, I was really excited about him until he just became this like milquetoast nothing guy who refused to stand up to anything that I was wanting him to stand up for. I'm not against him. I in a lot of ways, I do hope he wins. I think that the Liberal Party is reprehensible and disgusting, and I think Mark Carney is reprehensible and disgusting, far more so than the Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre. But at the same time, I just think, again, like we talked about this a bit yesterday, but I just think people think that, everything will be fine and all the problems will be solved if only just the Conservative Party wins. And it's not true. The Liberal Party will still maintain some power even if the Conservative Party does win. And I don't put it past Canadians to vote them back into power next election because they're like, it's all good. We can all go back to sleep now.
Yeah, it's what's wild to me is everybody's saying, Poilievre just has to get in power and then he'll be able to do his thing. Like then he'll be able to cook. They voted unanimously for that conversion therapy ban, which I think is, forget conservative, it's insanity, and that insanity is emblematic of the Conservative Party in Canada. He'll get in power and do what? More of that? I mean, that is the antithesis of what the so-called Conservative Party is supposed to be in Canada. And then people are trying to browbeat PPC supporters into joining them because they just need to get into power to do their thing, when while they had the power that they had, they passed laws that are fundamentally unconservative. So it's I don't know what the future of Canada is going to look like. When you're not here, I'm going to air some criticism that the PPC has gotten for its inability or lackluster performance to respond to the snap election, because there are a lot of ridings that don't have candidates, and some people are emailing me very upset. But so that we don't also cover each other's material too much, when does our interview on your channel come out?
So right now it is behind a paywall, and it'll go public on Thursday. So if you go to meghanmurphy.ca, it's there. So paid subscribers have access, and I really appreciate paid subscribers. That's actually, for the most part, how I make a living is just through, most of my work is independent work. Obviously, I do some freelance writing as well for, The Spectator and Spiked and National Post and things like that. But mostly what I do is independent. So my podcast and my writing is there at meghanmurphy.ca. My podcast is also on Spotify. It's The Same Drugs. And paid subscribers is just $5 a month, and it supports my work. And you can watch my great interview with Viva there.
I'm getting your website, Megan. Why am I not Megan?
You have to put the www first for some reason. I think it has to do with the redirect to Substack. Maybe, I don't know. People always think that I'm like a boomer when I'm like and they're like, you don't have to say that. I'm like, well, it doesn't work. You don't put it in.
Well, maybe I'm spelling Megan with
MEGHANMURPHY.ca.
Encryptus said you put it in the private chat, Encryptus.
No, I pinned it in Rumble chat. Neuro posted it, and I pinned it.
And just a couple of questions from our locals community. Someone said you worked your way through studying odd jobs type thing, or in the industry.
No, just all sorts of jobs. Like I did reception. I would do research assistant stuff. I worked in a video store. It used to be called a video store. I worked in.
I may ask.
What? Oh, it's called Cinephile. It was up on Main Street. It was sort of like an independent hipstery video store.
We used to have one called Movie Land in Montreal on Green Avenue. And that's
okay.
Yeah. One of the guys that worked at that Movie Land back in the day, I came in asking for a movie. He says, you should watch the Serbian film. I was like, hey, what's it about? And then he describes it. I was like, then I go back and I look it up. It's like I don't know what the guy was trying to, I think he might've been propositioning me to see if I was interested in the Serbian film. Anyhow, Google the description. Don't do it, Megan. I
worked at the BC liquor store for a while.
It's a good place to get some discounts.
Yeah, it was a pretty easy job.
Now, so someone's asking if you're able now to drink Mexican tap water and carry on with your day.
No, nobody can drink Mexican tap water. But I mean, I don't get poisoned by anything here. No, like nothing makes me sick. I obviously, I brush my teeth with Mexican tap water, and I have a very sturdy stomach full of, I don't know, all the good bacteria, I guess. So yeah, I felt like so much healthier since being here than I ever did in Vancouver. I felt like when I lived in Vancouver, I was getting sick all the time. And I love it here. I love the lifestyle. The sun's nice. The people, I love Mexicans. I love Mexican moonshine.
Megan, amazing. When we're done, when you go, flip me all the links that you want me to put, and I'll pin it in the comment. And we'll be following your candidacy. Nobody's holding their breath. It's not even a shot in the dark. It's not even a long shot. It's an impossibility, but make
fun.
Your voice heard.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was
Megan. Thank you for coming. And we talk soon. And when our interview's out, I'll blast it around.
Okay, awesome. Take care.
Right.
Godspeed.
Bye. Bye-bye. All right. By the way, everybody, that was fantastic. That was Canada. That was Megan. Canada in Mexico, Megan talking PPC frozen bank accounts. Do I see Rikieta Law in the backdrop here? I see Nick Rikieta, who was covering with Andrew Branca today. Nick, it's been, so what's new, Nick?
Some things.
You're gonna have, like, every time you appear somewhere now, you're gonna have, like, they're gonna get the elephant in the room out of the room. Nick, it's good to see you again.
Thanks, man. It's really good to see you. Good to talk to you. It's been way too long. I'll get the elephant out of the room really quickly and really succinctly. 11 months ago, I was arrested. I had a bunch of cocaine in my house. I shouldn't have had that, but I did because of all sorts of reasons, mostly doing it. And I've been dealing with the legal fallout from that for the past 11 months. Just on Friday, I was sentenced after pleading guilty to third-degree possession. And now I finally get to move on. I don't have to go to jail. I don't have to go to prison. I have some probation to do, and I'm really looking forward to that. But now I get to go back to work and seeing all you wonderful people.
Do we call it a deferred sentence where you behave properly, you don't do bad, and they will defer what it was 30 days that they would have otherwise sentenced you to?
Yeah, there's two components to it. So first is I have a guilty plea, but I'm not actually convicted. So I will not be convicted of the felony charge. I won't be convicted of a misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor. I've received what's called a stay of adjudication. So the judge listens to your guilty plea, does not actually accept the plea, but they basically hold it. They hold it in the file. And as long as you comply with probation, the charges will be dismissed as if they were dismissed by motion. So they will have no impact on my rights. I will be able to own guns. I will be able to vote, all of those things. In lieu of that punishment, which would also include, I believe, 21 months in prison. So I don't want that one. That's a bad one. In lieu of that punishment, there's a probation period. And in my case, that is up to 5 years, which is the maximum that's allowed for this type of offense. It's up to 5 years because it can end early if the conditions of probation are met. But during that time, my real conditions are I have 80 hours of community service. I have no drugs or alcohol, and I'm subject to random testing. And that's really about it. I also would be ordered to treatment, but I've already done that. so I don't have to do treatment again. Now that did come with 30 days of jail time minus the 2 I served when I was arrested. However, that's the deferred part you're talking about. And so that is up until August 1st. If I have complied with probation through August 2nd, that 30 days goes away completely.
Can I ask you anything?
Yeah.
That you can feel. So when did rehab? I mean, I'll preface this by saying most people of good faith, in fact, everybody of good faith, and most people, even if they don't like you, are more interested in just how you're doing and surviving and coming back from. What was the rehab like? Where did you go to rehab?
I didn't have to go to rehab. So in Minnesota, when you have a substance crime, they order what's called a Rule 25 assessment. It's a chemical use assessment. So you talk to a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. You tell them your history of drug use, as far back as you can remember, any substance use history. And then they have some other factors as well involving mental health and physical health. And you go through this long interview process. It takes about 2 hours and it's very comprehensive. And then they make a determination on a diagnosis if they want, and then a determination on what needs to happen going forward. So I was very candid with my licensed drug and alcohol counselor. I've actually known them for a long time as an acquaintance, not as a close friend or anything. But it was nice to be able to have that comfort to open up to someone and just tell them everything and know that you're going to get a fair hearing from it. They did not diagnose me as an alcoholic or an addict. Obviously I was abusing substances, but they didn't go as far as saying there was an addiction issue. And so I was prescribed the lowest level of treatment, which is 40 hours of relapse prevention, which is basically, it's 40 hours of group therapy. You go in, talk to other people who have had issues with drugs and are either there voluntarily or because the court has ordered them to be there. And, you get just tools for really anything. These guys come from all walks of life. So for some people, like there's anger management sections, there's just good decision-making sections. And then there's things about, avoiding or identifying triggers for use and then avoiding those triggers, et cetera. But yeah.
Let me pry a little bit. Like
Sure.
I could assess my own childhood. Like when you're answering these questions, how far back do you go and when? I mean, from an external perspective, we can all say, having observed you, when we found it to be becoming a visible problem. From on a personal level, like what was your history like? I mean, we saw
pretty basic, pretty basic, and probably surprising. I mean, I had a couple run-ins with marijuana, and I mean like literally used marijuana like 3 times around the time I was 15 to 18. And then I really didn't use, I think I had weed once in college. I was not a drug user. And then sometime around, when I was 40, I just decided to delve into some hard drugs. And there's a bunch of really personal reasons that I won't get into for it. But I mostly did cocaine, MDMA, and ketamine. A little bit of, I preferred hallucinogens, so a little bit of LSD and mushroom experience as well. But I stayed away from anything that's an opiate or meth. I'm not in any way interested in those things. So mine, the typical kind of party drugs, and I enjoyed the heck out of them, but that got me in a lot of trouble. So
now the question is this: is it? Have you ever seen the movie Owning Mahoney?
Nope.
It's with the guy who died of an overdose from Boogie Nights, Punch Drunk Love.
Oh, Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah. So it's about gambling addiction, which in terms of everything is analogous to drug addiction. And at the end of the movie, he's seeing his therapist, and he says, what was the best you've ever felt like gambling? He said 11 on 10. He says, what was the best you've ever felt like not gambling? He said 6 on 10. And he says, well, how would you feel living the rest of your life on a 6 on 10? And he says, fine. And then the irony in real life is he ended up dying. But is it? This is a thing where, like, listening to Russell Brand, it's now, this is a perspective for the rest of your life going forward, right?
I mean, I guess it's hard to describe because in my situation is mine, and my situation involved my personal drug use. which people did see. Like it was, I'm broadcast every day and often broadcast on substances. But even when I wasn't, like the effects of those were pretty apparent as kind of an ongoing thing. It takes a while to just have that flush out of your system. But I don't have a physically addictive issues from most things. And I don't know of anything I'm physically addicted to. I have dealt with other types of addictions, in the past, video games primarily, but I've never had anything like that involving physical substances. What was also happening was I had a lot of personal issues that had been piling up for years, and that was running in tandem. And so those two things sort of fed off each other, energizing and creating like this massive ball of catastrophe that all hit at the same time. And that's when everything kind of really, I guess I hit rock bottom would be the expression. That's when I would be arrested right after that. But having those things go in tandem was brutal. As far as substance use goes, I went 40 years without using any drugs. And I think I'm very fortunate in that I have no desire. Like I don't care to do them right now. I don't know how I'd feel in the future, but I don't have any, like, there's no compulsion there. There's no need or like, gosh, I really long for it. I had fun. Don't get me wrong. And there's lots of things that I liked about what was going on. I'm not going to lie and say, because you don't do these things because they're not fun, right? Like that's why they're compelling. But I don't do those activities that were associated with my use. So I don't really have any purpose to do them, if that makes sense. And,
no. Well, it makes sense. And I say, like, in your misfortune, you're fortunate enough that I say you might have hurt some other people, but the only person you really hurt is yourself. You didn't kill anybody else. You didn't die of an overdose. I mean, like there's some small blessings in your misfortune. And at the end of it, I mean, I know you had traditional, I don't know how religious you were.
I've always been, God has always had my back, no matter what, through my entire life. And it took me a while to learn that. But I learned that in my early 20s when I would look back on a hard time and realize like, that I was way up from where I was, before that hard time. You'd go through it and then you go to the next peak, and the next peak is higher. I'm waiting for the next peak and to see what it is. I mean, I have no idea, but God's had my back through all of this. Things could have been a lot worse legally. They could have been a lot worse financially, but everything was always taken care of, but by the grace of God. And my faith has never wavered. People may not understand because I have probably some different opinions in them, but the one thing that I've always adhered to is that I know that God loves people. I love people, learned it from him. And as long as I stay faithful to that, I think that I can make mistakes, but ultimately that's the right perspective to have. And I mean, I'm going to make more mistakes in life. I just hope they're not catastrophic.
Yeah, I was going to say, may they be slightly less extreme than those. Anyways, Nick, I'll say you're looking good. You're certainly looking better, and you're looking good. And
Thank you.
Godspeed. Now, by the way, so you're back up and you're able to stream and you're doing, are you doing the midnight to 5, or you got to change your style? You got to change you got to change your time frame.
Well, I've been trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I'm not quite sure what the ultimate result will be, but what's been going on now is the Karen Reed trial started today. And so that's, for now, I'm 8 to 4 Central Time.
That is a much better time schedule than midnight to 5. Nothing good happens after midnight. You should be okay.
No, so that schedule though was picked for a very particular reason. I have narcolepsy, and narcolepsy isn't just falling asleep. It is daytime fatigue, but in a weird way, your brain kind of flips. When you get tired, your brain tells you you're awake. And so ever since we had children, my wife and I, our oldest is 17, I was always awake at night. And so when the kids needed someone at night, I was usually awake late. And then also if we were sleeping, I would wake up, I could grab a baby who's crying, change the baby, bring it to mom to feed. Baby finishes eating, take the baby back to the crib, put it down, and I'd go to sleep immediately again. Like I wouldn't stay up because narcolepsy, you can just go out. I'm out in under 5 minutes every time. So it was kind of a tool that became really effective. I was up late all the time anyway, helped out with the kids. And then the thing that became really beneficial was if I started my show at 11 p.m., which is where my time slot kind of ended up, the kids were in bed and asleep generally by 11 p.m. So I could do my show uninterrupted. I could be around for the family for the rest of the day. What happened though, is as my kids got older and I didn't necessarily have obligations, I would let that stretch out longer and longer. And then of course with the substances, it became, that became a less ideal time. I don't know that it's going to be that way anymore. It's not really necessary to be in that time, but right now I've got 6 weeks of trial, so I'm not super worried about figuring out that schedule just yet.
6 weeks of Karen Reed trial. Not nothing. You are
not mine.
Your schedule is clear now. So you still got the locals, right?
Yes, we still have locals. I broadcast to YouTube and Rumble, Rekieta Law. So if you're looking to watch the Karen Reed trial, and it is full, it's a retrial. I can recap today if you want.
Oh yeah.
It's a retrial.
It's the retrial of the initial trial where was it a hung jury the first time? It was a hung jury, and they couldn't come back with a verdict.
Right. And the case is wild. A brief summary of the case is there's this woman named Karen Reed. She's dating a police officer in Massachusetts. And there's a police officer party that starts out at a bar, ends up at one of the officers' houses. Karen Reed and her boyfriend have some sort of maybe altercation. She ends up driving away. There's a snowstorm. He ends up dead on the ground outside in the front yard. And the theory of the case of the state is that she backed up this SUV, hit him in the head, I guess, knocked him unconscious. He falls to the ground and dies out in the snow. The official cause of death is hypothermia. However, they believe there's a head trauma related to causing that hypothermia or causing his inability to escape the hypothermia, if that makes sense. The problem is there isn't really any evidence to support that. There's not much to support this idea that a car backed into this guy. There's no real damage to the car. There is a missing taillight cover. However, when they recovered the body, there was there wasn't any report of any pieces of taillight that are like laying around. Later, when they went back 2 days later, there's 48 pieces of taillight on the ground where his body was. But again, no one saw this. It wasn't collected at the time. You've got all these cops who are at this party, and the EMTs come to try and resuscitate this guy when he's eventually found several hours after he goes missing. And the investigation is very shoddy. It involves the collection of blood for DNA samples in red Solo cups. Things are not done properly at all. The head investigator is a guy named Proctor. He was later fired, in part because when we searched the defendant's phone, he had texted someone else that he didn't find any of her nude photos or something like that. Like it's kind of wild stuff.
Did he have any head injury in addition? Was there any documented head injury in the coroner's report above and beyond the hypothermia?
There is a hematoma above his right eye. I don't know if I'm not sure. We haven't had any of the medical examiner for the supposed head trauma to the back of the head that they're saying would have caused the unconsciousness. I have I did not follow the first case. One, because my life was in crisis, but two, I had kind of started to. It happened at a bad time, and I didn't go back and review it because I want to approach this as a juror in this case, not a juror who knows the last case.
Well, and actually explain that for people who are going to listen to this. There's do they have any knowledge of the prior trial? I mean, they're going to try to find a new jury that doesn't have any knowledge of this case, no preconceived notions.
Not only do they have they go through a completely new jury, and they try to get the same thing. They may have some exposure to it, but when you voir dire a juror, you're asking them, do you have any preconceived biases or opinions on the matters of this case or the specifics of this case? What do you know about it? Have you read about it? And these teams, I didn't watch jury selection, but you're gonna want to pick a jury that has little to no information. it's a big news story. And, you know, in a local jurisdiction, you're going to have some incidental exposure. And it's not required that the jury knows nothing about it. It's just required that they have an unbiased opinion going into it, or that they at least they say they do. And so they have an entirely new jury. But one of the really interesting factors of this, in my opinion, is that one of the defense attorneys now was actually a juror in the first trial. So a juror in the first trial was an attorney. She's not a criminal defense attorney at the time. She apparently does like some insurance related stuff with trucks, maybe. And she was on that jury. She has now been hired by the defense team, which is a massive weapon, because now you have access to what was actually said in a deliberation room from someone with knowledge about this. You can talk about what was effective for the previous jury, what was not effective, where they need to, polish up their defense. So
well, someone who is so convinced by the innocence that they now are working for the defense.
Right. That's a powerful public statement. But also just from a practical legal perspective, I mean, you have a weapon who knows everything about the arguments that happen that we will never hear. The jury room arguments are, you know, they're protected entirely. And you normally cannot get that information unless a juror comes to you to deliver it. So
I was following it not following it live, but just following the trial. Emily Baker was covering it at the time. And I mean, I know of the insanity in terms of the weakness of the evidence, and people were Googling how long it takes to, there was some issue, like someone was search engineering, how long does it take to die from hypothermia or something?
Right. How long to die from cold?
I mean, these are things that make absolutely zero sense. And apparently it was such an outrageous prosecution in the first place that they were even shocked they decided to retry, but they did. Mm-hmm. This was day one of the actual opening statements today?
Yep. We had opening arguments today. And then we had two witnesses. The first witness was the EMT, or one of the EMTs who attempted to resuscitate him after they discovered him. And the second witness is a friend of the deceased who was driving the defendant around as they were trying to find the victim, because he was missing from approximately 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. For lack of a better window of time. 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. He was in the front yard the whole time, but they were driving around to multiple houses. Snow was falling. The weather was getting worse. It's dark. And so I guess the idea is that he was laying down. He was laying down on the ground, and the snow covered him up, and so people didn't see him. However, I don't know everything about this case, but I do know that part of the defense's argument, and what one of their experts will testify to, is that his body actually starts the process of being dead at a warmer temperature and was moved later outside to a colder temperature.
How is that determined?
I think it has something to do with the fingers and post-mortem or perimortem blood flow to the extremities. Obviously it changes the moment your heart stops. And so there's a different rate of whatever. The expert's going to tell us about it, but the defense expert is going to testify that he died in a warmer location and then was moved to a colder location. And at the same time, the prosecution is basing part of their argument on the recorded battery temperature in his cell phone, which they show it slowly going down over the course of the night. So their contention would be that no, he was outside. The battery on his phone is cooling progressively over this period of time. And so that's how you know that he was outside, because the battery wouldn't do that. The problem with that argument right out the gate is that when you've got something that goes from 100 degrees Fahrenheit, it doesn't matter if you're at 40 degrees outside or if you're at 68 degrees inside. That 100-degree battery is going to start cooling the moment the phone is not in heavy use. And so saying that there's a progression downward from a high temperature to a lower temperature doesn't mean that you're outside in the cold unless it goes below room temperature. Okay. But yeah, it's kind of wild.
So the trial,
actually, I got another. I have a question. And so I actually watched the entire trial today with.
I saw you chat. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So what did you think about the prosecutor in his opening statement? So I definitely have some opinions.
I thought it was terrible. Straight out the gate. This prosecutor was apparently on Whitey Bulger's defense team, which is kind of wild. But he his opening statement was a mess. I didn't understand what his overall point was. Again, he's telling me about cell phone temperatures and not really linking as to why I'm supposed to care about a cell phone temperature. I mean, my explanation that I just gave you about going from 100 degrees down to eventually it gets down to like 40 degrees once they pick up his body and it's no longer, the cell phone was between his body and the ground. So once they pick up his body and the cell phone is exposed to the air, it drops below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. But my explanation about why that might be important was just inferred. That wasn't actually said during the opening statements. Then you've got discussion about Waze, the navigation app Waze. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, for sure.
Being a source of the data that they're going to use to prove that this woman, backed her car into this guy. But you're talking about a matter of 30 feet. And they're talking about how Waze is the most accurate navigation thing. And it's like, well, but every GPS chip in a phone is collecting the same data. Waze is just interpreting the data. If you're using Google Maps, it's getting the same exact raw data from the satellites. It's not actually changing anything. So how are you telling me that Waze is accurate enough to tell me about a 30-foot backup into a person? Sufficient to convict someone of murder is a really, really difficult thing for me to swallow. And I don't think that the prosecutor was very eloquent in his use of just saying Waze is the most accurate. And we know this. I think any expert is going to shred that. If people don't know, GPS on your phone has an error margin, a margin of error, something like 3 or 4 meters at least in all directions. So that's not going to be very useful.
Facing murder charges.
Yes, this is murder with malice.
Well, so they've determined that she deliberately ran him over and not that it was an accident after a party in the night or something?
Yeah, I think that's the argument, is that she and he were angry. She gets in her car and decides to back into him and hit him with the car. And it's also there's another factor. She was above the legal limit for alcohol. She had drank several drinks that night, so she's over a 0.08. And I'm not positive on Massachusetts and how that works, but that may be a component of why they're saying murder, is that her consumption of alcohol and driving over the legal limit may have been the contributing factor to the murder charge versus a manslaughter charge. But I don't know if that's the case. I'll have to look more into it.
Hey, Encryptus, you got another question? Encryptus is
I do.
Go for it.
So one of the most interesting things that I didn't follow the first trial. This is actually my first day hearing about any of this. But
Right.
the thought about corruption and the cop involved and the evidence, the holding the evidence, the family, the connections. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, one of the problems that the state has is that all of the witnesses basically don't like this Karen Reed woman, and that predates the death of this guy. I mean, she's his girlfriend, but this is a group of Irish police officers. I don't know if they're actually Irish, but the idea.
So it's from our locals community. It seems like a good time to bring it in.
Perfect. But it's these are Massachusetts Commonwealth police officers. They sound like them. You can hear that heavy, thick New England accent, and they're drunk. Who knows what happens here? I mean, there is one other thing, one other injury I forgot to mention. His arm is covered with cuts. They've been described as lacerations. I'm not sure if it's more appropriate to call them lacerations or abrasions, but they're significant. They are, they're cuts down into blood, and the main officer, who's the homeowner where the party is taking place, had a very large dog. So now, I mean, if you talk to me about it, I hear that this guy's got a hematoma above his eye. He's got what looks like significant dog bites from about his mid forearm to his shoulder. Looks to me like he gets in a fight with the homeowner. Dog reacts, bites him. Homeowner hits him. Maybe he stumbles backwards. His head hits a counter or a kitchen table, and it's lights out. He's dead. And now they've got a problem on their hands because they've got a dead cop. They don't know what to do. So they drag him outside, wait a little bit.
and try to frame his girlfriend who they never
and the
liked
girlfriend who they don't like. And I think there's a lot of merit to that theory, and I would assume that the defense is going to push that as the theory of the case. You don't, as a criminal defense attorney, you don't have to give an alternate reason. The state has to prove the case, but it really, really helps if you could say, look, here's a reasonable way this could have turned out. And doesn't it kind of seem like maybe no one tried to kill this guy, but they're really scared about it. Maybe another problem is this guy dies after being served a bunch of alcohol at this house. You've got potential civil liability issues for wrongful death if you keep serving someone who's obviously drunk alcohol. That's not just for bars. I mean, that could be for a homeowner too. That theory of liability is something you may not want to face. And so again, if you've got a scapegoat and all your friends or the cops are going to be investigating it, maybe you just drag the body outside and get everybody to agree to the story.
I know a bit of it from the original trial. I can't believe they're retrying her, and let alone for another 6 weeks. So you're going to be doing this day in and day out for the next 6 weeks, unless there's some things that come up and you can't live stream.
Yeah, I'm co-streaming with Andrew Branca, which we both broadcast to our own channels, but we're on the same screen, so that gives a little flexibility because I sometimes might have to step out and go do, like today, I had to go sign something at the probation office. So I had to drive and be away for 20 minutes, but that allows Andrew to take over the stream and keep it running, and people don't have to go anywhere because he could control the video feed and all of that. So I plan on doing just about every day, although there may be a day or two where I just can't because I do have travel.
6 weeks is a long freaking time to commit.
It is
8 hours a day to, but it's going to be, I mean,
something, but
yeah, no, this is, I mean, the other thing is, I don't think anyone's going to jump down your throat if you just air the trial and put your little avatar on, just have it as on another platform. Who is, it's a court camera, right? Or is it Law and Crime who has the exclusive rights again?
I don't know who has the main rights, but it's available on multiple local channels, like NBC 10 Boston, I think CBS 8 Boston had the feed up. Court TV had a feed up. I would assume Law and Crime did, but I don't talk about them too much.
No, for good reason. Nick, I'm going to go to the locals after party. I'm not going to ask you to stick around for that. It's good to see you. It's good that you're looking good. What's your
There's
locals?
a lot of comments here in tips that were related to Nick.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me get in a second.
Sure.
Just tell everybody who's discovering you for the first time, rekietalaw.locals.com.
Rekietalaw.locals.com. Yes.
Okay. Nick, nice to see you back. You mentioned who made your in-ear monitors. So that, can you say it again? Who did the molds?
Yep. 64audio.com is where I got them. They have monitors that are not custom molded all the way up to these, which have like Rekieta Law logos and stuff on them that you custom design.
Are they really,
no, these are not. These are wired.
Okay.
They have Bluetooth monitors, but they also have wired monitors and like Bluetooth attachments. So these are one of the companies that that recording artists use for concert stuff. The
Bluetooth causes brain cancer. I don't care what anybody says. Don't use the Bluetooth. But those look good. The range of error for GPS positioning can vary, but typically standalone GPS accuracy is about 5 to 100 meters. It's one hell of a range. Depending on factors like satellite geometry and atmospheric conditions, advanced techniques such as differential GPS can improve accuracy within 1 to 5 meters. Well, yeah, it depends on the app, right? Like if my jogging app is going to be much better than my Google's map or whatever else there is. That's from Power Cleric.
Well, see, here's the way it works, right? You get GPS data by the GPS chip that's in your phone. And some phones can, there's other data coming in, right? You have a telephone tower or cell phone tower triangulation that your phone is doing. And you can actually have Wi-Fi location data as well. And apps can marry all of that. But the reason that these things don't seem to be inaccurate is because they know where a road is, right? So when you're driving on your car, there's what, a 25-foot wide stretch that your car could be on. So even if you have a 20-meter inaccuracy in the wrong direction, the app goes, wait, but there's nothing there. That's a bunch of trees. So I'm pretty sure he's not driving there. He's probably on the road. Mm-hmm. And that inaccuracy can switch in the other direction. And then of course, the app will get, as the app gets more and more data, it's more and more refined, but it knows where you're supposed to be. That makes it look way more accurate than it is. But your GPS chip is just getting, it's getting data from however many satellites it's in contact with, and it's triangulating those together. It might not be triangulating depending on how many satellites are there, but it's calculating where you are based on those intersections of satellite data. You can't change that app to app. You can only change how the apps interpret it. That's not raw data. That's not more accurate or less accurate than anyone else. Again, apps are guessing where you are based on the most accurate GPS readings that they get.
Encryptus, who's the man you're listening to.
It's also GPS is satellite. So during a cloudy snowstorm, the accuracy drops significantly.
Exactly.
I am always at my desk from midnight to 5 a.m. It's almost midnight 30 now. LL, great to see you back, Nick. This is Encryptus. Watched your stream all day today. Was awesome. Thanks for joining. And
thanks for having me.
We got, but dude, it's good to see you again. Bot522 says subscribed.
Hey, thank you.
And then no, I think that might be to me, not to you. But hold on. There's one more here. We got just discovered and followed a few short minutes ago, and looking forward to more episodes. It says Icebreaker 2020. Nick, so that's it, man. You're so Locals is back, YouTube, Rumble, and Life, and that's it. Now you're gonna move on and grow in a way that some people are not going to want you to grow from, because a lot of people, there's a lot of people.
Not everybody wished me well, which was sad. But there were great people out there. You and Barnes, from the start, completely classy, also completely right. In your assessments of how things were going. It was funny watching people tell me I was handling things wrong, and then at the end of the case going, "Oh, Nick got a better deal than I thought." It's like, it's almost like I was handling things strategically. You don't do everything perfect, but you and Barnes had things pegged from the beginning, and you guys always just had my back as saying, "Hey, we know under the mess there's a decent guy there." And that's all I could ask from anyone who I would call friend. And it was really sad to see people who I've helped out and talked to and spent time with in person ignore the fact that, hey, we sometimes have really, really shitty times of our lives, and a little grace can go a really long way. So I want to say I really appreciate that. It was really, I heard you and Barnes on my sentencing day talking about it. And it was, that was one of the most heartwarming discussions. So thank you.
Well, Nick, and I've been falling in love with the caterpillars in my backyard, and there's something of a metamorphosis here as well. In that, it's a transformation of a human, and you'll need. I mean, sometimes support. You need to make sure that people are not going to, what you have to just watch the road that you're driving down going forward. But we are all fundamentally imperfect, and you are fortunate enough to have something of a rebirth. I'm not saying you're a butterfly, but you've had something of a rebirth, so make the most of it. And Nick,
but my wings are so pretty.
Well, now I'm looking at your shirt. Your shirt kind of looks like a butterfly wing pattern. That's paisley.
Yeah, I picked the loudest. Someone. One thing about me, this. I approach things with as much levity as possible, and what bothers some people, and I really don't mean it to, I'm sorry, is the past happened. And I'm matter of fact about it. So when I get on stream, someone's like, Coke shirt. And I'm like, actually, yeah, probably.
Oh, someone said that here. I didn't want to, I'm not bringing it up. I'm not,
I made my plea. It was mine. I did these substances. There's no hiding it. There's no denying it. I would have said something sooner, but I didn't want to compromise my criminal case. And that's that. My kids did not, until the arrest, know anything about substance use at all. Now, my kids have gotten a very strong education on drugs, and they just, they joke with me, but also like they'll make fun of me because Dad got arrested. But that's because we have this very light but deep relationship with our children, my wife and I, because my son was 1.5 years old when I stopped working out of the home. and I've worked from home every day since. That whenever I was working, I was always home. I have spent so much time with my kids over the years. I'm very fortunate in that. I've probably spent more time with my kids than some dads will ever get, because they're gone out of the house for, 8 to 14 hours a day, depending on how far they have to drive and what their work schedule's like. That time, I was able to build such good connections with these kids that, they knew me. They knew that that I wasn't out to harm them. They weren't exposed to anything under my watch or anything like that. And so when this happens, they were just happy that we got, we all got reunited, and that mom and dad are healthy and everything ended up okay. We probably have a better relationship now than we ever had. And so I'm just thankful for all of that. And if that's what comes out of this, great. Then I won't say it was worth it, because I would have rather it come about in a different, less catastrophic way. But, God doesn't do, God uses all things for good. But those circumstances can be good or bad. Mine happen to be bad because of my choices, but if they're used for good in the long run, then they'll just be part of the story.
I'm going to read these. These are for you. You'll come back bigger and better, Nick, because a good man always is there. Because a good man was always there to begin with.
Thank you.
And we got honest and unconditional ownership of your activities is almost your fans needed. Is what your fans needed. Thank you. And then thanks for bringing Nick on the show and for always speaking the truth. Godspeed, Viva, Nick. That is from Michael Yakachuk. Nick. Well, anyways, I went back to my phone, made sure I had the right number. We're in touch. Look, I'm not going to follow that trial. I'm not committing to 6 weeks of one subject matter. But everyone who's watching now, go check out Nick. Who do we Encryptus? Who are we rating before we end this?
Mark and Eric. Eric's Told Stories.
Good idea. Let's do that. Nick, thank you for coming on. It's good to see you again, and we're going to stay in touch. And that's it, man. Enjoy the rebirth.
And next time I'm down there, I'm looking you up.
Absolutely. We're here.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
You too.
Peace.
Bye-bye. All right, people, we're going to end it and go over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. The caterpillar metaphor is going to be around for a very long time, and I'm going to share one on Locals, not just the one that I posted earlier. It was, when I say a millimeter from perfection, because it was slightly out of focus because someone walked in the back. We're going to go look at this. We're going to go to our Locals after party. Let me make sure that I got everything here. Nick, good for you for taking responsibility. Most people refuse, which is why they hope you fail. Yeah, my issue, people do a lot of self-harming, make a lot of self-harming decisions in life, and you hope that, they don't end up, doing irreparable harm to themselves or others when people are going after the kids and trying to make up all sorts of nonsense. That's where you cross a line of decency and inhumanity, where, by and large, when someone hasn't done something irreversible, you hope for the best, as opposed to being the internet lynch mob. And I think Nick is, he's a good man. He's going to be good. All right. We're going to end it and go over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Unless I missed anything, Encryptus. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. That was definitely murder if she backed up over him on purpose. Yeah, that's Ali. Okay, go watch America's Untold Stories, raid them, and enjoy it. If you're not going to come over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Tomorrow, I am pre-recording an interview with Gadi Taub. It's happening, people. Going to talk Israel, the most popular subject on earth. And then actually going to go from Gadi on Wednesday to Myron Gaines on Thursday if we've hammered down the time for that. So stay tuned, but we're going to be live tomorrow, 4 o'clock, as usual. That's it. Rumble, enjoy the day. Locals, here I come as soon as I can figure out how to do this. Bada bing, bada boom. Peace, Rumble. Locals, we're on. Let me go to the chat. I'm curious that it's good. He's got a man. It's if anybody hasn't seen Owning Mahoney, and then the irony of Owning Mahoney is that Philip Seymour Hoffman ended up. I think there was a conspiracy as to whether or not something more sinister was going on with Philip Seymour Hoffman in terms of whether or not he died of an overdose. I always don't know if people end up in the celebrity world, if people take their own lives, does the estate maybe think something about it is are they more amenable to passing it off as an overdose than a suicide? That's what I've always wondered. And then there was some discussion with Anthony Bourdain along the same lines. But then there's also a question as to, sorry, I just got distracted because I didn't realize that I didn't give them permission to enter the stream. There's also the question as to whether or not, doing drugs recklessly to the point where it takes your own life is the type of self-harm, and it's a form of suicide. But all right, that's good. Let me go over to the chat and see what's going on here. The meme, people, the meme is so good. What are we doing? Is the middle finger guy buffering? That's from outlook.com. One of the people says, is that actually a raid or a mobbing? We're sending over a lot of people to Hanley and Grobert, and may they enjoy it. She's beautiful and smart.
30,000.
Yeah, it's amazing. And for anybody wondering, I didn't put the names in because I don't want to put pressure if they couldn't end up making it. But I'll add it afterwards. And I'm gonna clip the segments and then publish them separately because Meghan Murphy is amazing. Everybody should know her. And we all know Nick. It's just a question of people. No, and then the thing is, I think Nick is going to mature in his perspective of, dealings with others on the interwebs as well. I know he's got some levity about things that most people don't have levity about. But for the grace of God, it could have been any of us. She's smart and beautiful, says Connie Rock. One of the people says, Viva, are you aware of the abuse of the legal rights and due process of California and German attorney Rainer Fulich? I know the name briefly. He was licensed to practice law in the U.S., but I don't know if he was a dual citizen. He and his wife moved from their place in California back to Germany near the beginning of the scandemic, hoping to effectively fight the human rights abuses under the emergency. He established the Corona Investigative Committee. With a few others, they began interviewing yada, yada, yada. A search of Rumble yields dozens of videos, okay? While traveling back and forth to the U.S., he was essentially abducted by Mexico by the German government unlawfully. Ever since, the German legal system has abused his rights, violating their laws and due process. Reiner was framed by a fellow CIC member, apparently at the urging of the German equivalent of the CIA, and with their help through the charge that he stole over 1 million euros that has been proven false. Among other irregularities, he was not granted bail, has been held in solitary confinement. Global research. I know the name. I didn't know all of this stuff, and I'm without taking it at face value. One of the people, I'm going to look it up after this show. Let's see if he's able to be contacted. Rainer Fulmich. There is no gray, just black and white. The gray is why we are in such a mess now. It's gray. Okay, I don't know what that's. I'm not getting into a discussion there. Patrizia says, Viva, I'm confused. Unless you become a non-resident of Canada, you must pay tax on total global income. Being outside of Canada for more than 6 months can make you a non-resident by default, even if you haven't applied officially for status. I'm not sure, but assume you are a non-resident. You can't run for MP. I do not wish to sound critical. Definitely should attain a Canadian tax lawyer accountant, Patricia. I'm not getting into any of that. None of my business. It became obvious over the past decade or so that people were being influenced, controlled, not just by the traditional tools, lust, money, power, but that the best instincts of humanity were being twisted and used against us. One of the people says, yet the manipulation was revealed with a closer look. And then we got 60 Special, who always says, hi, Viva. Hello, 60 Special. How are you doing? If you have any questions, 60 Special, ask them. I shall get to them. Rocket Boy says, you see Cuomo referral, Viva Fry. I did that. I had that as one of the stuff. I had a bunch of stuff that I wanted to talk about. Let me show you this guy. My phone is going dead. Encryptus, were you able to let Nick in?
Nope. There was no permissions today. I got in without you letting me in. Meghan Murphy jumped in without letting her in, and he jumped in too.
I didn't realize. I thought I had turned off the permission. Yeah, I have require approval off, and yet I still got a notification. I didn't see that they texted me. Let me just tell Nick that I ready when you just saw this exclamation point. LOL. Thank you again for coming on. Period. That was Nick, and then my daughter says she's not answering, but I know that someone picked up my kid. Okay, so I didn't leave anybody.
Just left a comment that you might want. So I'd suggest you chat with Robert Barnes regarding Rainer Fulmich before deciding.
Well, I'll bring anybody on. I'm just like, I'm not taking any comment at face value for the accuracy of the information, but I don't want to insult one of the people. I just think I'm skeptical of everything. Accuracy. People can make unwitting mistakes. Also, I know nothing about Rainer Fulmich. Spam Ranger says, I'm glad to hear that Nick navigated through his adversity, but people like him who go through their work or activism, draw attention from dangerous adversaries, should use better judgment. Years ago, I had a goon problem due to identifying defects in semiconductors. I survived this because I was very attentive to maintain compliance with the law. Yeah, for sure. Like no jokes. Who was it? The gator biting the GoPro camera. Like, oh yeah. Well, that's the most of my exposure. Who's gonna say, Viva, you were fishing with a 3-barbed hook in a barbless setting? You might. Yeah, there's people out there who he made it obviously very easy, especially given the people he was pissing off and the subject matter that he was talking about. People. I mean, you literally. It's like, recording while you're driving a car. Someone says, oh, you're distracted driving, and I don't know, file a complaint. It's like, yeah, you live a public life. And especially when you put a lot of stuff out on the internet, people will look for any form of whatever non-compliance with whatever infinitesimally ridiculous minutia of administrative law that they can use to go after you. I'm trying to think of like the car, like, whatever. Anyways, but you're right. I mean, it's a no-brainer. You're 1,000% right. And whatever. He doesn't need me to lecture him. Verify everything. I followed Reimer Fulnick for his work for years. This is one of the people. Finboy6, someone made this with Nick for obvious reasons. Yeah. The cocaine with me as Scarface doesn't work except for the fact that maybe I look a little bit like Scarface. The dark Mediterranean skin. I'm joking. Svi Hansen's okay. I read that. Never went anywhere. All right. Now, so what I wanted to show you, it's so frustrating. It was near perfection. We had 4 more births, and I got to get one of the caterpillars.
She broke her wing.
Stop it! I got to go get one of the butterflies out of the lanai. Okay, so check this out. I'm gonna go right to the spot. It's once you understand what's happening. Oh, yeah. I'm not sure let me see here. Go here. Okay. So check this out. It's in focus right now, but there was someone in the back who, look at the head. Look at the head of the caterpillar. This is not sped up. This is real. This is still pretty good. Let me just hold my hands here. It's a little shaky. So the caterpillar, this is real time, not fast forward, not time lapse, starts to basically, I see, it's expanding and sort of pushing the skin off. Now I'm going to use my finger to go this way. Let me see if don't do that. Hold on a second. I got to go like this. Okay, so like this. Okay, so now look what happens as you go fast. So look at the skin and just see what happens. See, the skin gets pushed up into that little black thing there. And then I think it gets brought in. I guess it feeds the butterfly, but that's what happened. And the only problem is I think it fell out of just a little bit of focus. So I'm going to do it again because I have absolute obsessive compulsive disorder. And this is not perfect. It's pretty darn close, but now if you see, it's just slightly out of focus and it's not as sharp. Now the thing's like just doing the boogie woogie in there. How freaking cool is that? Now, someone in the comment section, how can anybody look at that and have any doubt as to the divine nature of the universe and the existence of God? And I'm very much inclined to agree right now. My only retort to that would be, why the hell would God have made it so flipping unnecessarily complicated? Like, my answer to that is he did it to blow the minds of his conscious creations, us. Oh yeah, hey, I think I'm going to make an animal that is a tiny little animal that gorges itself like a fat little pig, then goes through its skin busts open, it turns into juice inside of its chrysalis, and then it turns into a butterfly, and then it emerges to fly off. And a butterfly that I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the monarchs don't taste good, which is why birds don't eat them, but lizards do, because of the milkweed off of which the caterpillar feeds. If I'm not mistaken about that, let me just. Do monarchs taste bad because caterpillars eat milkweed? I think that's why. Yes, monarch butterflies taste bad because their caterpillar feed on milkweed. Milkweed contains toxic compounds called cardenolides, which the caterpillars store in their bodies as they feed. The toxins persist through metamorphosis, making adult monarchs unpalatable and even toxic to predators like birds, but not lizards. This chemical defense is key to survival strategy, as the bitter taste deters predators who would often avoid the monarchs after one bad experience. The distinctive orange and black wings, yada yada. And then I know that you got this other butterfly that mimics the monarch's pattern so that it gets the benefits of appearing to be toxic, but is not actually toxic. Did Viva try to eat one? Not yet, SVE. I can eat everything. I don't think I can eat a worm or a caterpillar. I can eat like crunchy disgustingness, like dried crickets is one thing. Like booger popping disgusting things like caterpillar, I don't think I could do without vomiting. Even, I don't really like caviar or those fish eggs, but I do like tapioca balls, actually. Where did you get the caterpillars, Viva? A special SOV. Home Depot sells the milkweed plants and they come infested with the caterpillars. It's just freaking amazing. I am not letting this one go. This is a massive security issue on Rumble. Encryptus. Oh, what the guy Encryptus, what happened?
He was all right. So this guy was started to spam selling drugs via the mail in the chat.
Was it the guy Via Fry?
Yes, but that wasn't his actual name. So when I right click it and choose mute or delete, I couldn't actually ban him because the username didn't actually exist. But because I now have API access to the data, I ran all the data, found the actual username. And that's what I had sent to you. It's only you can add it. What this means, though, is that they found an exploit in the Rumble chat system where they can falsify their name and then spam the chat, and nobody can stop them.
Okay, well, describe this to me in one paragraph, and I will send the message with your info over to Chris so that they immediately take care of it. Okay. Thank you. Now, into locals. Selling drugs. Infested Martha. Yeah, first of all, nobody wants caterpillars because when you see what they do, they just destroy it. They destroy everything. Gypsy Muse says, I ran over my boyfriend on purpose. I would most definitely scream, I hit him. As I was freaking out over his lifeless body. Makes retarded sense. Yeah, well, I'm not. Thanks, Viva. I will be sowing milkweed seeds out here where I live, so hopefully the caterpillars show up in my garden, says a special SOV. Yeah, I mean, if you can get the milkweeds, I think they're all. And the thing is, the caterpillars, when they come on milkweed, are tiny. It's going to drive me crazy that I missed that it was out of focus by like a millimeter. One of the people says, yes, the latex is also a defense mechanism of the milkweed plant. 3 parts of the common milkweed plant are edible by humans, harvested at the right time and cooked in 3 changes of. Yeah, I knew someone who actually ate milkweed, didn't eat it properly, or didn't cook it properly. Everyone who ate it got sick at the exact same time, started vomiting uncontrollably. You know what things I don't eat? Things that will make you sick to the point of death if you don't cook them properly or at the right time. So I will not ever be doing the fugu. I was just watching, was it Mr. Beast? That was some stupid thing that my kid was showing me about eating the fugu or the puffer fish. No, not doing that. There's nothing tastes that good. Excuse me.
You let your child watch Mr. Beast?
Nah, because there was a short that came up and he doesn't know yet about the controversial stuff. So just a reminder, Trudeau gave $10 million to a terrorist. Empathy says hyphen. I want to steal that. We were talking about the Kadar. What was his name? Omar Khadr. My understanding is there might have been an argument about violation of due process with him. And if I want to steel man it, he's a 15-year-old kid, sees his father get killed or, in combat, his parents brought him in there. But nonetheless was a 15-year-old kid, adult, however you want to see it, who partook in, I think, killing an American soldier in a response to whatever. So whether or not there's more gray zone in that, I still take the position that you give $10 million to a terrorist who killed soldiers, but you lock up Tamara Leach. I mean, the Tamara Leach, Pat King, Chris Barber are the Canadian political prisoners who are entitled to millions as far as I'm concerned. But so there's that. Finboy Slick says, to be fair, Mr. Beast content might be mental junk food, but it's still mindlessly entertaining. Well, it's also mildly educational when they're eating pufferfish and whatever. But But yeah, my kid, they don't know about that controversy. I don't want to ruin Mark Robert. I think Robert ruined himself when my kids saw him. The episode where he was, did he do an interview with Fauci or Bourla? One of the two. And then my kid's like, oh, the youngest, who he's absorbing, he's learning through osmosis, but he's not yet able to defend what he hears and repeats. So he's got to learn that sooner than later. Poke salad is edible, but has to be cooked the right way. Not doing it. Sting 17. And that's it. See, Viva talks sensibly, says Outlook_com. Let me see here. Just going to refresh and see if I got any more. 60 special. Does 60 special say anything else? Nope. Chris from Mr. Beast. I'm also very, very suspicious about what those folk might have been up to behind closed doors, but that might be my own, what's the word? Preconceived notions. Rogan made his bones paying people to eat things. Oh, did we never get to Rogan on this show? I didn't get to the Rogan part. Did I get to Rogan?
No. Jumped right into Meghan Murphy.
Am I going
to? She came on early.
All right. How long have I been out for?
It was just a split second. You just did, you did the intro. Meghan Murphy hopped on, and then Nick, and kind of rolled into now.
Well, shit. Then I got all of the. Maybe I'll just do a car vlog on Rogan. Do we want to see the Rogan? No, I'll do. Are we interested in seeing Rogan?
Everybody here would love to see that, I'm sure.
Well, then let us do we shall end with the Rogan. Do we remember Cernovich last week put out a tweet that said, it was last week? My goodness, it was, what day is it? What day is it today? It was Sunday or Monday. Cernovich put out a tweet that said, pray for Joe Rogan. The intelligence community / military industrial complex put a quote hit, end quote, on him. All of those fake people who he built up, he was way too trusting, are turning on him. It's in coordinated fashion. First they smear, then they do worse. The demons want more war. It's funny. I DM'd Cernovich just to make sure I didn't miss anything massive in the news, and Cernovich clarified, no, I understand. He didn't really clarify anything. He just said, these people who are now going after Rogan because he had the audacity of criticizing Douglas Murray, that arrogant, pompous British prick. Now, it is funny, by the way, that just because he has a British accent and he does come off as a little snooty, if he had, I don't know, say like a Midwestern or even a Canadian accent, maybe it wouldn't have been quite so off-putting. But you got it. When you hear someone talk like this, it really seems like arrogance, pomposity. I'm not sure that there's any accent or drawl in which this could be said without it looking like what it looks like, arrogant pomposity.
Have you been to the crossing points?
No.
What?
When were you last there at all?
I've never been.
What?
You've never been?
You've never been?
Well, am I not allowed to talk about it now? I've never been to. Have you ever been to Nazi Germany? Are you allowed to have feelings about them?
You can't time travel, but you can.
Right.
But you can travel.
Okay, but so what? So what's the point?
No. By the way, what did Dave Smith just learn here? Don't use imperfect analogies when you just have the perfect example in front of your face. That was a good comeback by Douglas Murray. You can't time travel, but you can travel. All right, Mr. Douglas Murray, have you ever done heroin? Have you ever OD'd on fentanyl? No. Well, you've never OD'd on fentanyl. How dare you talk about how terrible the drug crisis is? I mean, it's the stupidity of thinking that somehow experience makes you smarter. But if there's anybody who looks at this and doesn't think that Douglas Murray comes off looking like a pompous prick, that his experience is that which makes him smarter or more of an authority, we have different assessments of reality.
Okay.
I find that
lots of people have been there and agree with me, and lots of people have been there and agree with you.
Yeah, but
so
if
I don't
you're
know
going to spend a year and a half,
and that's a very good retort to the retort from Dave Smith, because you may disagree with him. He's not a dumb man. There's been a lot of people who've been there and they agree with me. A lot of people have been there, they agree with you. So being there is not the determinate element in having an opinion on a subject matter. This led to some online discussion, and I didn't really get into it, but I didn't understand why it has led into the onslaught of attacks on Joe Rogan. And Dr. Neil Stone, and I would invite everyone, go, you guys know me, but go check it out. I've been needling Dr. Neil Stone for being a jab pushing propagandist for a very long time. And now I'm going back to Cernovich's tweet about, the deep state or the war military industrial complex in conjunction with the pharmaceutical industrial complex are going after Rogan. Like they went after him for the pharma stuff. Now they're going after him for the war stuff. Dr. Neil Stone says it took one person to call out Joe Rogan and the guy's having a meltdown. And then I'm also thinking, I don't have a direct line with Neil Stone because I don't think he likes me. I was like, did I miss something about the meltdown? And I had to go do my homework. And this apparently is the meltdown.
Have you been there? Right, that's a good point. You haven't been? By the way, how is he in all these wars? Can I just go to wars? By the way, how are you allowed to just go to wars? Is that the way you should at least can you just go to courtesy of going there. Can I just go to wars, or do I have to come back and say what people want me to say about the wars? Can I go to the wars and have my own opinions, or do I have to have the opinions?
Not if you want to go back.
That's right. It's very interesting, this war tourism. How do I get on this war tourism?
Yeah.
I'd like to go to the Ukraine. I want to go. I want to go. I want to go to all this war tourism.
I like Tom Dillon or Tim Dillon. Jeez, what's his name? Dylan. I like him. That was a good episode. I just finished it today while I was out for my jog. Have you ever been? And it's an interesting thing, this thing called war tourism. Some people like that good-looking actor who was in Colors when he was younger, Sean Penn, gets to go meet Zelensky because he's politically aligned. Others, like Gonzalo Lira, get detained and murdered in prison or allowed to die in prison. Have you ever been? And so I didn't understand the controversy, but that was the meltdown. The meltdown was him making fun of the guy because, Joe Rogan is kind of a comic. I was like, oh, Neil Stone, not Roger Stone. Dr. Neil Stone is a propagandist through and through. Propagandist on the jab, propagandist on RFK Jr., and now a propagandist on the deep state apparatus as relates to you do not criticize the man who supports the wars. You do not criticize the man who supports Israel. And if you do criticize that man, as Rogan did by platforming Dave Smith, who I don't know what expert means anymore, but Dave Smith is plenty educated. Might not be 1,000% right. Neither is any expert that has ever existed. But they make fun of the Douglas Murray, who is a neocon war whore, it would seem, and then the regime comes after you as they're coming after Joe Rogan. That's the controversy. And it's quite wild to see. Do I have an article on this? No, I don't. It's quite wild to see the smear campaign that is being orchestrated against Rogan right now. What was this? What did I want to bring this one up for? On the Joe Rogan show, oh, he feigned shock. Yeah, that's one we already saw. So now I understand it a little bit. Douglas Murray thinks he's the expert, even though he had strong opinions, I presume, before he's visited every place. I also have an operating theory in life that experience doesn't make you smarter if you don't know how to digest it. So having been there doesn't make you any smarter, because I can give you some names who have been to Gaza and who came back with what I would say were the wrong conclusions as to, legitimacies of government. Sometimes experience makes you smarter. And other times, like the guy who gets bitten on the face by a dog, experience will make you traumatized. And you will not draw the right conclusions from that experience. You might draw the wrong, broader rules. So, yeah, experience in and of itself, if you don't know how to digest it, means nothing. The lack of an experience doesn't mean that you don't have a valid position on it. I understand the smear campaign and why it's being levied against Rogan now, because he's, at one point in time, was against the jab, at one point in time was for the horse paste, and at this point in time, he's against endless war, and the deep state, big pharma, big military apparatus has to go after those who have big platforms, who are influential, and who don't toe the deep state line. That's it.
Two things.
Sir.
I dropped that Newsweek article in the private chat, but also you said Joe Rogan is kind of a comedian. He's a comedian.
Well, I've never been to one of his shows, Encryptus, so I'm not sure how I'm supposed to know that. I've never been to the mothership. I've never been on Joe Rogan, so I only hear him. I've only seen him. I'm joking. Joe Rogan mocks guest who called him out. Yeah, that's that. Why did I have that? I had that somewhere. Oh, you know why I had that? Because I didn't have it. Did I put it in an archive link? Yeah, bottom line. Let me pull up the Newsweek article. Yeah,
He's not mocking. First of all, how else are you supposed to imitate a Brit by mocking their accent? I say, The Simpsons have made fun of Brits for a very long time. Austin Powers, in a recent episode of the hit podcast Rogan, he took a jab at a journalist, author, and commentator. Oh, he's a commentator. So is Dave Smith. Douglas Murray over his comments the latter made to a guest on a previous guest. Why it matters. Rogan's show boasts a wide audience. Oh, there you go. Can't have him shitting on the war machine. And his runaway success has made the comedian one of the most influential podcasters in the world. What to know? While discussing the Israel-Hamas war, Tim Dillon, Rogan appeared to mockingly impersonate me. The human toll is unreal, Dillian. Dillian? Good. I'm not the only one who makes typos here, people. See, I can find somebody else's typo, just can't find my own. There are arguments to be made that the devastation is worse than you're talking about someone on your podcast. There's an argument to be made that starvation and people dying is worse than a podcast. Rogan interjected, but wait a minute. Before you say that, have you ever been? You haven't even been, Rogan said with what appeared to be an imitation of Murray's British accent. Well, this is some hard-hitting journalism, Newsweek. You guys are really earning your Pulitzers, which I don't ever think you had, actually. All right, peeps. That's it.
One more tipped question from Roosting, and I think that's it.
All right, good. And I got to go. Speaking of tipped questions, I got to pee. Hey, Viva, why not invite Douglas Murray on your show? You can test your knowledge against his. I wouldn't. Well, first of all, I'll DM him right now. That's it. I'll just say, here, Douglas Murray, Douglas Mackey, Douglas Murray. Have you ever been? I'll follow him. Number one best. This is him on democracies and death cults. Do I tweet out? I just made fun of you on the show. I was just making fun of your beautiful accent. Would you like to come on the show and have a discussion? I'll read. I followed him. We'll see. And I cut a bunch of my following on Twitter, like getting rid of some people that I followed that don't seem to exist anymore, because I'm going to keep my number under 900. I think it reflects poorly if you're following tens of thousands of people on Twitter. That is it. That was one hell of a show. Everybody, thank you for being here. And I'll see you tomorrow. I'm going to go see if I can get a caterpillar, go get the butterfly out of the thing. I've exercised, so I'm good on that. See what the kids are doing. Pee-pee, dog walk. Pudge has a urinary tract infection. We're going to hope it goes away on its own. And that is all for today, folk. Gaddy Tab tomorrow, 1 o'clock pre-record. Myron Gaines Thursday pre-record. And live stream 4 o'clock tomorrow. That's it. Godspeed, Locals. Thank you for being here. And God bless. Peace.